Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan and Ouellette, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this May 30th, 2023. Tonight we are welcoming my wife, special guest Tracey Ouellette, to the show to talk about why relationships fail. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with esotericism and metaphysics? Well, number one, this is a show that deals with psychology a great deal of the time, and psychology is a big part of this, but there's actually a very large metaphysical component to relationships, one that is extremely theological and spiritual at the same time, and we're going to be covering all of that tonight. So you don't want to miss this one. Don't go away. Well, hello, everybody. I thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining us, it seems like the numbers are a little light tonight. Is it because it's not a paranormal topic? Well, you know what? Deal with it, because there's sometimes a necessity to talk about things that are actually really relevant, and the paranormal is just not relevant enough to the entire dynamic of everything that must be understood within the metaphysical and esoteric spheres. Now, I know we could sit around and talk about tarot cards until we're blue in the face, and that would probably render, a massive audience of interest. But if you're not really looking at the actual dynamic of how human beings function, then you're kind of missing the entire point of esotericism. It's not all fun and games. I'm not really in a good mood tonight, so you have to deal with me with that, knowing that. Kind of in a real pissed off mood, to be honest with you. But it should make for an interesting show, particularly with the topic being what it is, because I think Tracey, when she comes here in the next hour, will give you some insight as what it's like to deal with a person like me. And I'm not an easy person to be married to by any stretch of the imagination. So the fact of the matter that we've been married for over 20 years, 21 years, is a testament to the fact that our methodology works, because we understand the dynamic, and that is an essential part of it, because when you live in a world where, we live in a throwaway society where, we don't need nice crystal, stemware. No, it's a solo freaking cup where you can throw it away, or styrofoam, just throw it all away, fuck up the environment, because that's what we'd like to do. Don't want to do work cleaning your child's diapers and having to do all that laundry. Just buy the freaking, disposables. Yeah. Pampers, right? I mean, the same people that are always bitching about recycling and everything else are the first ones that I see using that shit. And it's like, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you expect? You're part of the problem. And that's the kind of society we have. So if we're very quick to throw away our simple things like utensils and cupware, why not people too, right? Why not people too? So relationships don't tend to last very long anymore, because there's not a spiritual component that people recognize in it anymore. It's about personal gratification. It's about sexual gratification. And then when those things become boring, it all collapses and falls apart. And we're going to talk about how that permeates into not just relationships, because relationships is where you see it if you pay attention, but the entirety of the spiritual life. When you hear me bitch about and I bitch a lot about it, and I'm going to bitch a lot about it tonight. So prepare yourself. When you hear me bitching about spiritual apathy being one of the big reasons that we have so many people with problems today, and why you need an exorcist that's, overwhelmed with cases coming in on a regular basis, more than I can ever possibly take, because there's just one of me and too many of all of you. This is why, okay? This is why, because you've bought into the throwaway society. You don't know how to live any other way. So I'm going to try to help those of you who actually bothered to tune into this show today. I'm going to help those of you to maybe develop a better understanding. I think it's going to be a lot of preaching to the choir, unfortunately. But I know that this show has a broader reach than YouTube. YouTube is actually its weakest audience. The podcast aspect, the podcast version of the show is more popular. So hopefully some of those people will listen to me tonight and maybe take some of what I have to teach them into their lives so that they can live a more fruitful existence and maybe not be so throwaway in the end. Anyway, we have a new liturgical libations tonight, something we don't typically do, but since we're getting into the warmer seasons here, we're going to indulge in a little rum. So what do you have for us tonight, Jamie?
We have the Appleton Estate 15-year Black River Cask Dark Rum from Appleton Estates in Jamaica. And I've had a little bit before, when I bought it, and not quite sure what to think of it, so I brought it to the expert.
Well, I took a whiff of it before the show, and I can tell you right now, it's a true Jamaican pot still.
I'm gonna pour this for me, and I'm gonna hand the bishop the bottle because he really deserves it tonight.
Well, I had a lot of wine, so just the maybe a little less than what you poured. That's perfect. Yeah. But this is Jamaican pot still. Now, yeah. I can say that these aged pot still rums from Jamaica
beautiful color,
designed for tropical cocktails.
Right.
I mean, this is for tiki. Okay. And you can smell that rich pot still, copper pot still.
Smell the molasses. It almost smells like burnt molasses. So just a little teaser paragraph.
Yeah, go ahead.
The rum that makes up the Black River casks are hand selected and crafted with Jamaican limestone filtered water with no added flavors, and have all been aged for a minimum of 15 years in the tropical climate of Jamaica. This rich, full-body rum reveals aromas of toasted almond and delicate hazelnut, followed by notes of intense orange peel, rich vanilla, and subtle hints of medium-roasted coffee and molasses.
I think it's important for the audience to know that when you're dealing with rum, it's kind of the opposite of when you're dealing with Scotch.
Right.
Okay,
with
the aging. So when you see a bottle of Scotch, I think last week we had a 16-year-old, right? What's it, 16?
Yes, it was 16. Yes.
So when you see Scotch with 16, it means that everything in that particular bottle comes from something that is at least 16 years old. It might have stuff that's older, but it has to be at least 16 years old. With rum, it's up to, but this is a unique thing when it tells you. Okay, so just a little interesting bit of trivia, but it is an interesting part of the characteristics of this. So I can definitely taste the age.
I can taste it. I'm really tasting. It really tastes like burnt molasses and vanilla.
Yes.
And yeah, I think it would be really good as a mixer in a tiki drink.
Yeah, it's definitely. I
don't know if drinking it neat is what you should be doing with this.
Well, I mean, you can, and I mean, certainly Appletons are established as something for sipping, but I would say that this would go extremely well, and it's almost a misuse to drink it straight. It really would be best in a
which we can make that happen. This particular distillery has been around since 1749, so they know what they're doing.
Yeah, we're talking about the age of pirates.
Yeah, but look at that beautiful color. It does definitely have a unique taste to it.
It's gorgeous, and I like it. I actually find it to be quite pleasant as a sipping rum. It's not as full-bodied as the 21. Have you ever had the 21?
I have not had the 21.
21's amazing.
I've had several of the other types, but not. This is the first 15 year I've had, and I don't think I've had the 21.
You got to try that one sometime if you can. But this is pretty good. I like it.
I will finish it.
Thank you for sharing it.
Of course.
And we can throw it in some tiki later on, too.
I'm all about it. I'll leave it here.
All right, cool. All right. So, and we're going to be doing that Dungeons and Dragons soon. And we'll probably need some good drinks for that as well. Okay, so we've got questions from the ether here to get us started off on this first segment. And Brandon is not with us tonight. So we're going to just dive right in the old-fashioned way. And the first one is from Paula on the Nicolaitan Network, and she asks to explain the difference between a religious order priest and a diocesan priest. She was having some conversation with someone where the distinction came up, and she wasn't quite sure what that distinction meant, and so we're going to talk about that tonight. So those of you who have if you know about the difference, if you hear someone say a religious priest versus a diocesan priest or a parish priest, sometimes they're referred to as, now you'll know the difference. So a diocesan or parish priest is essentially a clergyman, a person who is ordained in the sacrament of holy orders to operate in the capacity of a priest in a parish for a particular diocese, working under a bishop. So they get typically assigned to one of the parishes within a diocese. A diocese is made up of a regional location of several parishes, all under the jurisdiction of one bishop. And all of the priests operating are under that bishop, but they operate within that jurisdiction of the diocese. And they are employees of the diocese. So they actually will receive a salary. They do not take a vow of poverty. They do take a vow of obedience and a promise, not a vow, a promise of celibacy. Okay, that's different. Okay, there's the only vow they take is of obedience to the bishop. That is an essential part of being a cleric. You have to, you have to be obedient to the church through your ordinary, and that's, it goes back to, it's part of the formula for how the clerical life works. But because they live in the world, and that means they have expenses like the rest of us. Maybe not entirely, because most priests will live in a rectory or a parsonage. Where they live free of charge. At least their living expenses are free of charge. All of their utilities and everything are taken care of. But their car, they buy and pay for themselves. If they have a car payment, they pay that too. Insurance is usually sometimes split between. Sometimes it's entirely taken care of by the diocese. Sometimes the priest has to pitch in for that. But they get paid a salary that they pay taxes on. Okay. Church doesn't pay taxes, but the priest does when he receives an income, and he is an employee. He's a legal employee of that church. So that's why they don't take a vow of poverty, because they're making an income, and that's also why they don't necessarily take a vow of chastity or celibacy, because they're not operating in a monastic way. They're still living in the world. They just promise not to marry, which is, I think, somewhat problematic. Now, this is only in the Roman Catholic Church. In the Eastern Church, there is no promise or vow of celibacy or chastity. Honestly, all Christians take a vow of chastity. We've all taken the vow of chastity by virtue of our baptism. We just don't follow it. But by virtue of being baptized, you agree to be chaste. You might say, well, what does that mean? Well, guess what? Chastity doesn't mean you don't have sex. Chastity means you don't have unlawful sex. Okay, celibacy means you don't get, you're not going to get married to someone. You're not going to take a wife or a spouse. But chastity means that you abstain from sexual activity until you are in a lawful arrangement, which means that you are lawfully married to someone under the sacrament of matrimony. And then when a husband and wife under the sacrament of matrimony engage in sexual relations, they are chaste together. That relationship, that union is a chaste union. Okay? A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't understand that. But that is what a priest is actually, I should say a diocesan priest is promising to not engage in a to not seek a wife. Okay? All right. So that's that one. Now, a religious priest is basically a monk who happens to be ordained a priest. And his role is to serve his community, typically. Okay? So that means that they are a monk first, and a priest is one of the offices that they also maintain. But the monastic life requires the triple vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So they do take a vow of chastity, which means that, it's the promise of celibacy and the vow of chastity. And then they also, the vow of obedience is the same. Instead of their bishop, it's to their abbot. And then the vow of poverty is such that they are not employees. So monks are not employed. They don't make an income. The community, the monastery, takes care of all of the monks. So they don't have bills or expenses, but they also cannot hold assets, which is both good and bad, because on one level, it's good in the sense that the goal here is not to make the priest live this austere life and say, you can't have anything. You gotta live like a pauper. It's honestly so that they're not distracted by worldly problems. Because when you have money coming in, you have bills, you have assets, and they sometimes take over your life.
It's kind of a big distraction.
It is a major distraction when you're constantly worried about worldly things. And a monk, that's contrary to their life. Okay, so the vow of poverty it's actually more for his sake than it is for anything else. It's not for the church's sake or anything. It's really for the monk's sake, that this is their way to release their attachments to all things of the world. And so a religious priest, upon becoming a monk in solemn vows, whatever he owns at that point is given away. Usually it's given to family and or the community. So a lot of times if it's a rich person, then typically they'll give a bunch to the family, and then they'll give like a bunch to the monastery to help support it. If they don't have a family, then they usually give everything to the monastery. So in a way, it's kind of investing into your future because you're part of the monastery. But the other side of the coin is you no longer have any control over any of those resources. The abbot then decides how those resources are allocated from that point forward, knowing that your healthcare will always be taken care of, your bills will always be taken care of, your food will always be there, and assuming that, you don't have a swindler as an abbot, which is, I guess, possible.
Hopefully not.
These days, who knows what could happen.
Right.
But this is the difference. Okay. So essentially there really is no difference in what a priest is. It's really just who they serve and how they operate. Okay. So, neither one is above the other. So you can't say the diocesan priest is lower than the monk because the diocesan priest doesn't take these extra vows. It's just they don't take the extra because they live in the world. All right. But when the monk is not supposed to be a part of the world. And so this is the difference. And so their priesthood is typically to serve the other monks. But people can come to a monastery and go to the sacraments and receive Eucharist. There's a wonderful monastery here in Conyers. Mm-hmm. We haven't been.
I have not been.
I've been a lot, but
ever.
You've never been. We've never been together, is what I'm saying. Yeah. We've talked about maybe making this a field trip one day.
Pretty darn early.
Yeah, it's an early trip. You want to get there when they start the divine office and watch the sunrise through the stained glass. It's quite beautiful. But there's priests. All of the priests that serve that monastery are monks too. And they all, that's where they serve. And so if you go and you visit, you get served, but they're serving their community. They're not out there in the world doing other things, with the exception of some monks that work in teaching orders, like the Benedictines. They're not cloistered. They actually operate in schools or hospitals sometimes, and they don't live in the world as independents. They don't have to get their own place, and they don't buy a car for themselves. They still don't have. They still take the vow of poverty, so they don't have bills. They don't have bank account. Diocesan priest has a bank account. Diocesan priest has investments. In fact, I knew a diocesan priest that was worth several $1 million. Oh. It was money that he inherited and everything else. He had a very good life in Palm Beach, and there's nothing wrong with that. That was his vocation. But with the if he was a Benedictine or a Cistercian or something, he would have had to have given that away to enter into the monastery. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. All right, I know that can be confusing to some people, and I wanted to address it. And thank you for asking it, because I'm feeling myself getting more calm as I'm doing the show.
Whoosha.
I could do some ohms or something. Okay, our next one is from KL. How is it possible for our loved ones who we think are in heaven to watch over us? So how is it possible for our loved ones to watch over us? I've always wondered if my deceased parents could watch over me and help if needed. What are your thoughts on this? Okay, good question again. Kind of relates to the question we had last week about, whether or not a person that enters the kingdom of heaven, if they can help you. Okay, if their perfection is such that they can help you. And same answer really as last week, in the sense that, once somebody enters into the kingdom of heaven, they are absolutely in every possible way considered to be a saint, which means that all of the privileges of being a saint are afforded them. So that means that, yes, they are part of the church triumphant. They can pray for us. They can help us. And they do help us. And they do pray for us. And that's the part of their role in this capacity. So how is it possible for our loved ones to watch over us? They don't watch over us in a ghostly sense. Okay, it's not this idea that they're floating on the clouds looking down at everything you do is not accurate. Okay, that's not how this works. They are operating at a deeper level, a more fundamental level, that is something that we do not understand in our framework, because we exist in a much more divided kind of way. I'm separate from Jamie. I can't hear her thoughts. She can't hear mine.
Although we're both pretty stubborn cancers, so technically we can kind of read each other's thoughts.
We can infer.
Having a cancer moment? Yes. Okay, we're
there
good.
You go. And she knows. We know each other pretty well. We've worked together long enough that she knows my deficits quite well. But I can't go in there and like listen to her thoughts about her private thoughts. There's a separation. Okay, there's a fracture. But in the kingdom of heaven, this kind of fracture, there's no framework for that. And once those that enter into the kingdom of heaven have been perfected to the sense that they can now enter into this perfect reality, they can connect with us at a level that we do not understand. Okay, but they understand it. And so it's not watching over, it's becoming an active participant in what you do, and then helping you to work through the challenges that you face while you're still stuck here in this godforsaken reality that we call life. Okay. So that's what it really is. But you would have to actually be in the kingdom of heaven for this to apply to you. You can't just simply believe that your loved ones are there and are watching over you. A loved one would have to actually be there for this to apply. Okay. And so this is why it's always best to request the help of the saints that the church has established through canonization, versus just trusting your instincts that grandma's in heaven. Grandma might not be in heaven. You might be better than grandma. She might be the greatest thing in your mind, but she might not be all that great in reality. So, you can't trust on the basis of what you would like to believe that she's achieved it. Chances are she's not in hell, but the odds are better than half that purgatory is involved here somewhere. And we just don't understand the complete breakdown as to how that works or transitions into perfection. We only understand it from the vantage point of what we can know through theology. But there's so much more to it metaphysically that is really outside of human understanding. So we just have to kind of work with it using the analogies we've got. She's wondering if her deceased parents could watch over her. Well, if they are part of the kingdom of heaven, then that's kind of part of the role of a saint, is to watch over those of us who are still here in the church suffering. Okay, or the church militant, rather, sorry. And the church suffering as well. So how is it possible? Well, that's the role of the church triumphant. That's why it's possible. God set up the church to help, for the church to help everyone else. That's the whole point of the church. So just because you've passed on doesn't mean your obligation to the church, as we talked about last week, is rescinded. You still have that obligation. And so once you reach perfection, you enter into a different stage of the church triumphant. Triumphant because they've achieved to the kingdom that we're trying to get to. And they still have an obligation to help us. And so how is it possible? Well, because of the church triumphant's dynamic. That's how it's possible. And that's what they do. And so, yeah, we can absolutely expect that those that have made it to the kingdom have watch over us in that kind of way. I mean, talking metaphorically, again, I've already mentioned that's not really watching over in a physical sense. It's more of being a participant in what we do. But I want to caution one distinction here. It's not just our loved ones. Okay, loved ones. The idea that family holds some kind of special place, that goes away in the kingdom of heaven. All right, that means nothing in the kingdom of heaven. All right, that is completely part of the human experience. It's all ego. That's another distinction. I'll look out for my family. I'll look out for blood, but I'm not going to look out for you. Well, that's against the Christian ideal. Once you have taken baptism on, every single member of the human race, whether you like them or not,
we are all children of God.
Yes, and we're all brothers and sisters.
And we are brothers and sisters keepers.
Yeah. Blood means nothing. Okay, so it's not just your loved ones looking over you. It's the entirety of the church triumphant. It's the entirety of the job of the church triumphant. So once anyone who, regardless of who they are, enters into the perfection of the kingdom of heaven, they are there for us, which is why you can ask for the help of St. Anthony when you lose something and he comes to you. You're not blood. Or maybe if you trace it back far enough, you might find, that you're a distant relative of his, but chances are you're not.
Let me tell you, after 50, you'd be asking that fella for a lot of help.
It's very true. It's very true. So that, I think, answers that question. Okay, so lastly, we have from Brandon. He left us a question before he left on his camping trip. What is Vicarious Filii Dei? Okay, I was watching this video on YouTube titled Revelation's Mark of the Beast Exposed, and this pastor says Vicarious Filii Dei adds up to 666. Okay.
Oh, Brandon, stop watching YouTube videos. Love you, son. Love
I know.
Ya.
I mean, I'm the first one to say, as a YouTube creator, which I'm doing right now, YouTube's full of shit. Okay?
Is this a poke at St. Peter?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So basically what it is the vicar of the Son of God is what it literally translates to, or representative of the Son of God. And it is a title that was sort of put into a forged document more than 1,000 years ago, that was used by some less than credible popes to increase their power and political control. And so, you know, what this is when you see these YouTube videos that are, you know, trying to show, look at, here it is. This proves that the Roman Catholic Church is satanic. Here's the proof.
It's about as dumb as the upside down crosses.
Well, it's exactly the same thing, because usually the same videos that talk about Vicarious Filii Dei are talking about the upside down crosses, not realizing that that's actually a holy image. It's the Satanists that got it wrong. Sorry, Satanists, but you got it wrong, and that shows how stupid you are. So, you know, it's the cross of St. Peter, because Peter refused to be crucified upright, feeling that he wasn't worthy, because Jesus was crucified upright. So he was crucified upside down. So all throughout the Vatican, you'll see upside down crosses. And so these evangelical idiots on YouTube will make these videos and say, see, they're saying this because there's all the upside down crosses. It's like you're watching too much fucking Amityville horror. Okay? You know, grow the fuck up. This is what I mean, honestly, there are days where I just want to just like reach out of my television screen, pull these people in and shake them, slap them around a little bit, shake them up, and be like, wake the fuck up. Okay. I'm so sick of the stupidity that's out there, and people eat it up. It sickens me, because it's like, look at, we do I try to do for you every week a nice show on Vestiges After Dark. I'm not doing this with the intent to build, you know, a massive audience. It would be nice to have sponsorships, but that's not the reason I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for personal gain. In fact, if anything, it costs me to do this. So it costs me at the very least a lot of time and effort that I could be investing in other things, like being a dad and being a husband, you know, things that actually matter more to me than the paranormal or even my so-called career, you know. But the reality is I still do it because I want to be able to give something back to those of you, those very few of you who actually do care about this ministry and support it. And so this is one of the ways in which I do it. It's why I'm so religious about it, because otherwise I wouldn't give a shit. And I didn't always give a shit. If you go back to the early seasons, you can see it's like I'll do it for a little while, and then I would go like months, if not years, without doing another episode. I've been very, like I said, I've been very religious about it now, so that I can give back for those few. And I do it for you few. Most of the people that listen to the show do not support the show. Shame on you for not supporting the show, because there's no other way to get that the show gets support. If the audience doesn't support it, who will, right? I guess you expect me to do it. But I guess that's just the way it is, right? But anyway, Vestiges After Dark at best on YouTube. I'm not talking about the podcast, which again, as already said, is more prolific. But the YouTube version of this show, the video version of the show, at best gets maybe 200 or 300 views. Some episodes, some old episodes will be up there in the 500 to maybe even 1,000. But most of them are like 200 or 300 views. Okay. Live right now, I'm looking at the live. We got 16 people watching live. Okay. The morons who put out this shit about the Roman Catholic Church being satanic easily get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers for their videos. And they're monetizing them too. I don't monetize. Have you noticed that you don't see commercials on YouTube? You don't see commercials. I don't monetize it. I'm all set up to monetize it. I refuse to, because I'm not interested in that. Okay. Not that it would matter, because there's only 200 or 300 hits. So it's not going to make a lot of money anyway. It's just going to be an irritation to those of you who are donating and actually do support the show. But the fact is, you know, when you look at all the more you lie and the more you make up bullshit about other people, the more people eat it up and will watch these videos, and they get these hits. They get the big hits. So 300 for a show like this one, who tries to give you matter of fact, realistic content. But if I were to lie and make up a whole bunch of bullshit about the Roman Catholic Church, then I'd probably be in the millions, right? I'd be in the millions. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not even liked by the Roman Catholic Church. I'm in a position where I could have a motivation to slander them in a way. Yeah, sure. Believe that they're the mark of the beast. They certainly treat me like I'm one. But the fact is that this is not my goal. My goal is the truth. My goal is authenticity, which doesn't sell well. and it's not very interesting apparently, because that's why we only have 16 people watching this. Okay, where if I did Vicarious Filii Dei and said that the Pope was the mark of the beast, we'd be in the millions, probably millions of viewers, right? Millions of viewers for that bullshit. Revelation's mark of the beast exposed. Oh, wow. You figured it out. You and your idiotic, moronic brain. What your IQ of 80 got you there, I'd imagine. But that's what we're dealing with, okay? That's what we're dealing with out there today. So what this is just an attack on Catholicism, making up shit, putting it on YouTube where people will eat it up, and there's no shortage of people who will eat this shit up. And when you read the comments, you can see it. You can see it. The comments are just one thing after another. But I knew it. I knew the church is evil. The Roman Catholic Church is so evil. And it's like, first of all, you're attacking the Pope. I mean, so if you're attacking the Pope and saying all Catholics are satanic because the popes are nefarious characters, which I agree, a lot of them are. In fact, maybe all of them are. I couldn't tell you. I'm not gonna judge people, but I will say that when you look at like the Borgias or some of these really nasty sons of bitches from the past who had the office of Pope, not reflecting really well. So yeah, I admit a lot of them are crap, and maybe the Vatican as an institution should be dismantled by the Roman Catholic Church. I'd vote for that. I would, but the fact is. You're a hypocrite if you believe this, because I can't think of anything more corrupt today than American politics. So if you're going to say that the political leader of an institution, because he's bad, the whole institution's bad, well, guess what? What does that say about you as an American? Because you're part of an institution too, and that institution's a hell of a lot more, a shitload more corrupt than the Roman Catholic Church could be on its best day. At least the Roman Catholic Church has a moral foundation that it teaches that is actually good. It's a good, sustainable, nobody lives up to it, all right, but at least it's there. There's no moral foundation to American politics anymore. It does not exist anymore. They've thrown it all away. All right. But you're an American. I mean, a lot of you are, not all of you. I know a lot of my audience is from Europe or whatever. But for those of you who are Americans, if you watch these videos and agree with them, well, it's like, you might as well condemn yourself too. Because if the leader of an organization or an institution is bad, that makes you bad, apparently. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm not in the best of moods today, so you're getting a more colorful show than is the usual Vestiges After Dark. I apologize if it's irritating to you. It's kind of irritating to me, to be honest. So we can be irritated together. But those are the questions from the ether that we have, and I think I've answered them to the best of my ability. So let's, in the remaining time for this segment, because Tracey's not coming on till the second hour, and we don't get to the subject until the second hour, let me talk a little bit as a precursor to what we're going to be discussing in actually a few weeks. And I don't want to give too much away because, I don't want to do next week's, or not next week's, but the last show of the season. I don't want to do that before it's time. So looking at the schedule ahead here, we have honestly 2 more shows of the season. So there's one on June 6th, which is going to be Open Lines and Open Topics. That's on June 6th. And then the last show of this season is June 13th. Okay. And then there's going to be summer specials every month until we start up with the fall season again. So, don't worry, Vestiges isn't going dark all summer long. We'll do one episode every month or so, a special. But June 13th is going to be a very colorful episode, I can tell you right now. And it is entitled Why I Sometimes Do Paranormal Television, Why I Sometimes Don't, and Why I Sometimes Wish I Never Did. And so on that episode, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of my experiences as having been a part of a very reluctant part of the so-called paranormal community, which I don't really think exists. I don't think there's anything. I mean, you can call the paranormal a lot of things. Community is not one of the terms that would come up to my mind. There's not a shred of community in among any of them.
It's more like West Side Story.
Yeah. I mean, you're being a little bit kind, but I guess that's pretty true. Yeah, it is like cliques and gangs and bullshit and more clicks and more gangs and more bullshit. And so I'm going to talk a lot about my personal experiences. You can ask me questions about what it was like. And I want to make sure it's clear. I'm going to make it clear tonight. I'm going to make it clear next time as well. I am not, the negative experiences I've had and my reasons for feeling like sometimes it was a mistake has nothing to do with Ghost Adventures. Ghost Adventures was actually a positive experience, and I will, as I said before, I will continue to work with them because I believe in the work that we have done with them. Am I a huge fan of everything that they do for the show? No, I don't. I'm not, because I do think recreational ghost hunting is problematic. And I mean, Ghost Adventures has done some, at least in the past, some recreational ghost hunting. But they're also doing it from a research vantage point, which I do respect. I think it should be, research purposes is important. And I also believe in helping people, and they at least have made an effort through using my services to help some people that have come across their path and became part of an episode or whatever. I see that as a win-win, because the show pays for our travels to get to a client that we otherwise may not have been able to help. And it doesn't cost the church anything, so it helps the church. And it gives us an opportunity to get out there and help people that we otherwise would not have been able to. So doing television has not been horrible, and I'm going to talk a lot about that. And doing Ghost Adventures has been a positive experience. At least my time with working with the GAC has always been a positive experience for the most part. But it's come with a lot of consequences. And so on that show, I'm going to talk about some of those consequences and some of the problems and some of the things that I'm seeing right now in paranormal television that is, quite frankly, is disgusting to me. It's really actually got me a bit riled up. We had a little bit of a discussion about this on the Nicolayan Network. And one of the members there said something today that I think was very true. And I'm not going to say who it was, but I'm going to mention it in the sense that I think it's important. He says that he thinks that I've been blacklisted because of my being very open about the reality of COVID-19 and never having bought into any of the bullshit, from the masks to the vaccines to the whole fucking thing. And I hate to say it, but to all of those of you who thought I was wrong, well, kind of laughing at you now, aren't I? Because I'm actually going to gloat. I was right. You were wrong, and go stuff it. But I knew I was right all along, where you were just going by what people were telling you. See, that's the difference between you and me, I think, for myself. And that gets you blacklisted a lot today when you think for yourself, particularly when you're dealing with very liberal institutions. And I'm by no stretch a conservative. I'm not. But I do realize that my interactions with liberal institutions have been less than stellar. And production, unfortunately, falls into that department. Okay. And that's been a big part of the negativity. But yeah, I agree with this member. I do think I've been blacklisted because I was very vocal on Twitter. I mean, very clearly got thrown off of Twitter without any valid explanation. They still have never been able to produce one, even under Elon Musk, which I think is just a poser anyway. I think he's full of shit as well. And I tell him to his face. I would, not that he gives a shit what I think, but the feeling's mutual, because I don't give a shit what he thinks. But anyway, as I look at this whole thing, it upsets me that, there are shows that are being put on networks that I have been a part of where I don't even get called. I don't even get called to consult because of the blacklisting and the backstabbing and all the gang activity behind the back, and all these cowards that have these big names. And I'm not going to mention anybody by name, but you know who you are. Not that you're going to lower yourself to listen to this show, but you know who you are. And I deal with this, and it hurt. You know who it hurts? It can't hurt me. Because no matter what happens, I'll be okay. I'll always be okay. But our clients will not be okay. And they're the ones who get hurt. The people that are really looking for help.
Yeah, I actually missed the post. I'm going to go back and look at the comments and get caught up on it. But because I was actually talking to real people with real problems today and talking to real clients and trying to talk them off ledges. Yeah. So I actually missed that exchange. But yeah, there's real work being done out here, folks. And a lot of it's not being done by those you think might be doing it.
Yeah, I was asked actually by another member, why wasn't I asked to be on a particular news show that's coming out on Travel Channel? And my response was quite frank, is because I'm actually running a fucking ministry that actually does something. I'm not hanging out with a bunch of clowns who I'm not sure that, do they even run a ministry? Is there really even a ministry there? Or is it just like the church of one, going out there? I don't know. I mean, I don't know some of these people from squat, but the fact of the matter is the fact that I don't know them tells me a lot about them, and I kind of resent the underhandedness of it all. It's not because I wasn't asked to be on. I probably would have turned it down anyway, because I don't have time for bullshit. And this sounded like a lot of bullshit to me. And like I said, I'm going to go into a lot of detail about this on that episode, the last episode of the season. But I just have some time now to kind of vent a little bit some of the things that are on my mind, and this is one of them. It's not the entire reason I'm in a bad mood today, but it's one of them. It's definitely one of the reasons. And this is what I deal with, folks. This is what I deal with. So the more you try to do a good thing, the more you try to make it authentic, and you try to, destigmatize. This has been my entire reason for doing television and having a podcast and being more public about it. Because you go to the Roman Catholic Church and ask them, why do you think they all come to me? Why do you think, Dateline, all these other, Dateline Australia did a show, thing, these other documentaries, tons of different producers I've turned down over the years. Why do you think they have even called, those that do call me, why do you think they call me? Because the Roman Catholic Church won't talk to them.
Or their pastors won't believe them. 10 cases currently that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. 8 of them.
Pastors don't believe them.
Pastors don't believe them. Pastors don't deal with this. It's outside their purview. Or you're not Catholic, we're not helping you. Or you are Catholic and we're still not helping you. Go see a shrink.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm dealing with, trying to talk these people off the ledge because they feel like they've been left out in the ether with no help whatsoever. And we have to explain to them that it may be July or August before we can get to you, and that just sets them further into depression.
And why is that?
If we can get to them at all.
If we can get to them, and why is it that we might not get to them at all? And that's because nobody takes this ministry seriously enough to actually support it.
Because of the shit they see on TV.
Because of the shit they see on TV. Yeah. Some of it's because people are just cheap. Okay. Some of it's because they don't understand tithing. They don't understand Christian obligation. I get that. Okay, but a larger part of it, when you have the exposure that a show like Ghost Adventures or Dateline or Conjuring 3, when you do stuff like this that has that kind of exposure, there's no excuse other than the fact that they see this shit on TV and they see the shit that, I'm going to say it, that Travel Channel has put out in recent times. And it makes us all look like a bunch of fucking frauds, and it pisses me the fuck off. So, you know what? If some of you out there, some of you nefarious types want to cut this clip and send it to the executives at Travel Channel, I invite you to do so. I invite you to do so because I am infuriated that I have an established relationship with that network. Through a show that I know from firsthand experience is a legitimate one, whether or not, all of the backstabbing out there, if you bought into it and you think that Ghost Adventures are, that's all fiction too. I can tell you my involvement has not been fiction. Okay. It makes us all look bad. Makes Zach's show look bad, makes the GAC look bad, makes us look bad, makes the Holy Nicolaitan Church look bad. So yes, I have every fucking right to criticize it and publicly call it out for what it is. So if you have a problem with that, come and get me. I'd love to have a conversation with some of you shits. It really, it irritates me. It irritates me.
I didn't notice.
You know, and it's because of my sincerity. It's because I only ever got into this, not to go on TV, not to have some fucking show, not to be, not to be Bishop Bryan, the exorcist bishop on Twitter, so that I can have a bunch of morons asking me stupid questions every day. And that's what it was like, these assholes that would come at me left and right, trolls, and every single day it was something. So it's like, being kicked off of Twitter was like one of the best things they ever did for me. But it was the principle behind it that I have a problem with, because they weren't kicking me off for my benefit. It just was a happy accident that it happened to be like, thank you for giving me a reason to get off this horrible platform. But it was the kind of people I had to deal with over there. And it's because they look at shows like this, and then they see that it all is a bunch of bullshit. And then they think that all of it, everything that's involved, is bullshit. So Ghost Adventures must be bullshit. Bishop Bryan must be bullshit. And I've been trying so hard to bring an understanding as to what's really going on in demonic possession. And it doesn't help when some dipshit show on Travel Channel pushes this content out for shock value. The reality of it is actually more interesting, but it's a little too intellectual for I think the audience. And they don't want to go intellectual, and they sure as hell don't want to go religious. God forbid you actually mention something that deals with the sacraments. I applaud Zach, honestly, for actually showing on Exorcism and Eerie when I offered the Eucharist to the client in that episode, and he actually filmed that, and it was part of the show. I thought that was a really daring thing for Zach to have done. So I have a lot of respect for Zach Bagans for reasons like this. Do I agree with everything he does? No. I'm sure he doesn't agree with everything I do, but that's,
It'd be pretty boring.
It'd be pretty, and honestly, a professional agreement, a professional relationship doesn't require that. We're not friends. All right. We're not family. We're colleagues. So colleagues don't need to like and love everything that the other person does. They just need to respect the core values of what they believe in. And I think that showed a lot about Zach's intention when he actually put the Eucharist and showed that scene on Exorcism and Eerie. I thought that was remarkable, because I can tell you right now, I don't think any other show would have shown that. We've done this before. It gets edited out. They don't want to show anything that gets a little too churchy. Because maybe then it gets a little too real. And then, and you can't say it's controversy that they're trying to shun, because they have no problem getting political. No one has any problem getting political. Look at these corporations today. How they don't care if they ostracize half the country to push a political agenda. And now look at all the money they give to these activist organizations, regardless of which side of the coin they fall on. Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby have been criticized in the same way that Target is for today. I mean, it's like, you know what? You're a corporation. You're not an individual. First of all, I have a problem with corporations thinking that they have the inalienable rights that the Constitution affords individual citizens. I have a problem with that. So I don't really think that a corporation has free speech. I know that the government gives it to them, but I don't think that's legitimate. I think that's to protect individuals, not corporations. So, your job as a corporation is to sell things, all right? Not to push agendas and not to finance activism. That's, I think, a gross misuse of corporate power. And yet we see it all the time. And it's disgusting to me. It's disgusting to me. I don't care what side of the fence. Like I said, I'm a moderate politically. So, the conservatives don't impress me any more than the liberals. And honestly, they both piss me off a great deal. So I don't really like either one of them, and I don't deal with either one of them. But, there's another attitude out there in the world today that if you're not on my side, then you're my enemy. And so it's like, I'm no one's enemy. You're
such an immature
train of
thought.
It is, but it's
so immature.
But that's the world today. And I see it with both groups.
Oh,
I see it with both groups.
Definitely. They're just wings of the same buzzard.
Oh, they are. Oh, absolutely. And then they're fickle too. They'll shift. They'll shift their position. At any point that it no longer feels gratifying. And speaking of feeling gratifying, we're going to talk about that a bit tonight. That's actually the core of tonight's discussion. So if you think we're going to be getting all like, sweethearty, and corny with like romance and difficult to watch conversation or difficult to listen to conversation, don't worry about it, because we're not going to go into those sappy territory. We're going to talk about the reality of it. And a lot of what keeps relationships like marriages together is the same dynamic that keeps relationships like a country together, which keeps a church together. It's all the same thing, really. And that's why we have to talk about it tonight. Okay. But relationship is the easy one for people to relate to, because all of us have had at least a relationship in some form or fashion, whether or not it ever got to a point of intimacy, maybe not. But we all, I think, have an innate longing for wanting to be special in someone else's eyes. I think that's a natural instinct that most people have. And so that's going to be the way that we can understand and relate to tonight's topic. But it has much greater, far-reaching consequences that we need to also factor in here. Because if you're looking at the world today and you're seeing political divisiveness and you're seeing like the shit that I just talked about and in the paranormal television, I'm not even going to call it the paranormal field. I'm not going to call it the paranormal community, because it's not a field. It's not a community. It's the fucking entertainment industry. It's a genre. Okay, it's a genre. That's what they want it to be. It didn't have to be that. I think Zach actually tried to make it something unique. They won't let him bring it to the next level. They want to keep it entertainment, because all they care about, all these networks care about, is just entertaining you. They don't want that. They're not interested in teaching you, you see. And honestly, you've made it possible for them to do this, because the reason Vestiges After Dark doesn't have a large audience is because I teach you. You don't want to be taught. You don't want to be taught. You don't want to have to think. Only the few that listen to this, do. So again, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sorry.
Most people just want their ego stroked.
Yeah. And I'm not going to do that. That's the last thing I'll do. And these television shows, I applaud Zach for at least making it unique. I applaud him for making the effort, not giving a shit what people say about him. And there's some horrible things that people have said about him, particularly in recent times. But I stand by Zach Bagans in the core of at least what I know, the limited part of what I know is that, and what I have witnessed is that deep down, he does have a sincere interest in getting to the bottom of the reality, which I respect, because that's what I'm all about. I like getting to the bottom of reality, understanding what it really is. And then, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm sure he knows that he didn't make money off of that. He made his fortune off of entertaining people, and that's sad, but that's the reality of it. And I'm not going to go down that route. I'm not an entertainer. All right. I'm not here to get the applause. I'm here to teach, so stick around and you're going to learn something. And if you want to go entertain, well, go get entertained. Discovery Plus is just a streaming button away. You can tune out of this one just as quickly. We'll be back for those of you who care in just a moment.
If the sky's breaking down, if the lightning comes to strike, I'll be the projection on the wall that it lights. A carousel line, just look into the sky and follow the light. My fate in my own hands, gleam in my eyes. Give me the thunder, hear the thunder, cozy thunder, right now. Give me the thunder, hear the thunder, cozy thunder.
Welcome back, everybody, to Vestiges After Dark. We're getting ready here for the second segment and tonight's topic on relationships and why so many of them fail. And you're going to learn a little bit about my own psychological and metaphysical theories on this, contentions perhaps. Should be pretty interesting. And we have my wife, Tracey, joining us to talk about what it's like being married to someone like me, which can't be an easy experience at all. So you'll find out a lot about that in a moment here. Don't go away. Okay, everybody, thank you for waiting with us through the break, and we're ready to get started here tonight with the topic. We're going to basically cover the topic over this next hour, and for hour 3, we're going to open the lines. If you'd like to call into the show or ask your questions in the chat room, we can take questions about what we talk about here right now in the second hour, or we can take additional questions that you have about metaphysics or esotericism, religion, spirituality, paranormal, whatever, that Jamie is watching very vigorously to make sure she doesn't miss anything. Okay, so
Right.
Let's welcome. You all know her. You see her. For those of you that watch the Mass, you see her every week, and she's filled in for Jamie before on this show. And this is my wife, Tracey. How you doing?
Hello.
You ready for this tonight?
Sure.
Okay, good. All right. So this is going to be a interesting, I think, time, because I think it will give people some insight into this very mysterious thing. Because I think when I talk to people, I can almost always trace their pathology, their spiritual problems, or even their social problems back to interpersonal and intrapersonal skills and their lack thereof. Okay, so it really fundamentally starts at the point of interpersonal relationships. Okay, this is something that is not being taught. So we got criticized a lot by friends and family when we made the decision to homeschool our son. There's an attitude out there that people think that that it's just not as good an education, or it's, you know, they're not going to be properly prepared for life, and they're going to be cut off from the social dynamic, when in reality, if you ever talk to a kid that's been homeschooled, they're actually far more socially competent than the kids that go to school, and there's good reason for that. And we might even talk about that tonight too, because it's also relevant to all of this. The real issue comes back to interpersonal skills and how we don't teach them. We don't teach life skills, period. And our entire school system is based upon teaching agenda. And I'm not just talking about political agenda. I'm talking about the agenda of the distraction of reading, writing, and arithmetic as if it is like the be-all and end-all of knowledge, when in reality there is very little of that lot that you actually need to know in order to function well as a person in society. In fact, you need very little of that. But we spend all of our time regurgitating the same concepts over and over in school instead of teaching people how to actually interact and how to actually work together collaboratively, cooperatively. I mean, there's always a little bit of that. You get the groups and everything else. But when you look at, I remember back in the 80s, and Jamie, you might remember this, it was a very common thing that when you were, if you had a kid that was an outsider in a class and it was time for PE, the PE teacher would always do this thing where they would choose the two popular kids to be the captains and they would have to pick their team, and the kids that were hated the most were always the last ones to be picked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was usually the really smart kids that were awkward around the athletic or popular kids.
Yeah. And this was a common thing, and it was always an embarrassing thing for those kids that had to endure that. And this was, again, a representation of showing how not to work together. It was really more along the lines of I guess if the Lord of the Flies is your Bible for how to have social, prowess, then that was the perfect thing to do. But are we really going to argue that the Lord of the Flies is an example that we should follow? But that's the kind of society we live in today. The politics is all Lord of the Flies, right? It's all of it. And then they have the attitude in school of projecting this aura of, we're going to condemn bullies, and we're going to do, and the fact of the matter is,
you just shifted what the bully is.
Yes, exactly. So it's important, before we even get into, intimate relationships, it's important to understand that the first problem is that interpersonal skills are simply not taught. The second problem is intrapersonal skills are not taught. So what's the difference? Well, interpersonal is when two people are trying to communicate. Intrapersonal is understanding yourself. And very few people can do that. They think they understand themselves. They think they're experts on themselves, when in reality they are on autopilot, going through life, going through the motions, going through the expectations of what their political ideology tells them to follow, what their religion tells them to follow.
Or they pick what's popular and grasp onto the
fads.
Of that.
Yeah,
yes.
the fads. And that's why you're seeing things like, that's why you're seeing the LGBTQIA plus becoming this phenomenon.
It's why you're seeing labels, period. Mm-hmm. Whether it's I have anxiety, I have depression, I have ADHD.
Well, there's that too.
It's important for people to hide behind the label. I'm deficient, so you don't have to expect much from me.
Yeah. And that's the big one. It's like, if you can already set the stage that there's something wrong with you when you keep fucking up, then you can't really get mad at them, because
that's not me.
It's not my fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not my fault. So this is what we take into our relationships as they get deeper. So this is what we take into our relationships with our family. It's what we take into our relationships with our careers, and it's what we take into our relationships with our lovers. And it's a toxic foundation upon which to build any of those things. All right, so this is why jobs suck. If you really look at most people's careers, they don't hate their jobs because the work they're doing sucks. They hate their jobs because they can't stand who they work with. They can't stand their bosses. All right? Usually they like the job. They like the actual dynamic of the actual day-to-day activity. They can't stand the people they work with. Right? And good reason, because most of them are toxic, and they don't want to have to be around toxic people. Let's face it, with your job, you're there most of your life. And then you have to spend most of your life dealing with people you hate.
You work with your coworkers more than you are with your husband.
Yeah, the person you actually do love.
Yeah, and law enforcement, I can tell you that. That was the downfall of several of my relationships, was I was always at work.
Yeah, always at work. Yeah. And that's never a healthy thing either, because what it does is it's shifting communication away. It's making you grow more distant. And I mean, that's always part of it. but the dynamic is flawed from the get-go. So we have to first start out by breaking down the fact that interpersonal and interpersonal skills are simply not taught. Okay. And this has wide-reaching ramifications. It's not just with lovers, it's with everything. Everything is damaged by this. So if you're wondering why the world seems so disjointed and screwed up today, this is why. Because it was never taught to you. You never learned how to actually have a healthy relationship, because you don't even have a healthy relationship with yourself. That's to say nothing about having a relationship with God.
Well, it's interesting at the beginning that you mentioned homeschool, because you mentioned, the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to note that literacy, people tout, the statistics on literacy, how, we flip the script. The majority of people are literate now versus, 150 years ago, the majority of people weren't literate. Mm-hmm. But what we're focusing on is the ability for people to read and write. What we're not focusing on is the ability for people to be able to convey information.
Yes.
We're not focused on whether your reading comprehension. We're not focused on your ability to be able to convey the information back out either. And it's interesting that you mentioned homeschool, because it all relates. Mm-hmm. It all circles back to, basically at its root, the ability to interpret information that is incoming and the ability to put out information that is outgoing.
Correct. And that's something that, again, like philosophy, like economics, like I'm talking about practical economics. I'm not talking about the economics of how the stock market works or how macroeconomics works with countries. And I'm talking about understanding how to manage your own budget. These are not skills that kids are being taught at all. They don't even know how to pay a bill.
Well, let's get even more basic. There's a rise in the idea of self-care. And self-care tends to be, when you see someone touting about it, like on Facebook or whatever, I'm going to do this for self-care this weekend, it tends to be an avoidance tactic.
Yeah.
It very rarely actually is like a building up of yourself. It very rarely is a ability to be able to help yourself, train yourself in order to tackle the things that are going on in your life, whether it's your job or your school. And there is something to be said for escapism, sure. Yeah. I mean, because I even shared something this weekend called, there's the thing called FOMO, fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. I posted something that I saw that was the joy of missing out. And there's something to be said for pulling away from the world and just kind of, quote unquote, licking your wounds
for a little while.
But it's not meant to be your MO. It's not meant to be who you are. Well, I think a lot of times people use self-care as an avoidance tactic instead of actually being able to pull yourself in a timeout, take a break, regroup, and then re-tackle whatever is bothering you.
Yes.
And I think, it's a slippery slope when we're approaching these things from like mental health awareness and, getting diagnosed with things like that. These are all important things to getting yourself onto the path of success, whatever that success might be. And that's different for every person, whether it's, capitalism or, whatever. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be financial success. It's not you getting the big corner office in the 30-story business tower. Right. But your own personal success, whatever that is, whether that's having a cottage in the middle of nowhere and successfully raising a garden or, landing that big Wall Street job, whatever that level of success is, you have to be able to tackle those things from within in order to achieve those successes. Right. And that's where we're at right now, I think, is people don't have that ability.
Well, that's all part of the interpersonal deficiency. It's a big dynamic. There's more to it than just one thing. It's not just about lack of understanding, but you have to ask the question. It can all be broken down to a very simple question. How do you expect to understand a lover when you don't understand yourself? How do you expect to have a relationship to God when you can't even have a relationship to yourself?
How can you hold your lover accountable for anything if you can't hold yourself accountable?
Yeah. Always blaming the other person.
You can talk about, how can you love someone if you can't love yourself, but it's also about accountability. A big part of successful relationships is the give and take of it.
And
sometimes you lose. Sometimes you lose.
And sometimes you're at fault. Sometimes
Yes.
you deserve
And
to lose.
sometimes you're wrong.
You got to be willing to accept that.
I mean, most people that I know that are always complaining and bitching about not having a relationship, it's like you have to ask, you get into it and you get into some of the things that they've experienced, and it all comes back to the fact that all they ever do is talk about how this person did this and this person did that and this person
what did
was
you
wrong.
do?
But they never talk about their
What did you not do?
What did you not do? It's like they act. It's like that. It's like that act at the beginning of Mass. What I have done, what I failed to do. That is not just about sins against God. It's also about understanding how we fail each other. So, as I said at the beginning of this show, that the church was set up when we were answering Paula's question. The church was set up so that we could build each other up. But this is a world where all people are interested in doing is tearing everybody down.
And themselves.
And themselves included. Yeah, so it's not like, but at the same time, they're hypocritical about it because they're tearing themselves down, but then they're not taking the blame.
Yeah. Because you brought me down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah.
It's really you.
It's always
to me.
So that gets us to the next thing. And so one of the things that the next, I guess, part of this dynamic and a really, I think, large part that's not like the cliche reasons like lack of communication. Of course, lack of communication is just one symptom of an interpersonal disease. Okay. So it's a lot of things. But when you're talking about this next one, this is what sort of started this conversation tonight. So Tracey and I were in the pool. And
as you do.
And we get very philosophical in there because there's really nothing to do except stare at each other. So,
the meditation bath.
It's the rum.
It's the rum. All the tiki. We got some good tiki rum for tonight. But we were in there. We're talking about this, and I was explaining some of my contentions on it, and I really think it comes back to some interesting things that happen in childhood. So I call this...
It's always childhood.
Usually you can always trace the problems, somewhere that comes to some trauma or some deficiency there. But I said to Tracey, I said, we're going to call this, I call this Disney Princess Syndrome. Okay. And you might think, well, what does that even mean? Okay. Well, I think the best example of it is Beauty and the Beast. That's the best one. But you have to understand that children are being taught these stories. Kids are going. Disney. Say what you want about the damn company. Okay, I kind of hate them today, but they, those parks have never been more popular. Going to Disney World, it's like they can't seem to control the crowds. They just get bigger and bigger every year. So people are obviously eating that shit up. And, despite the fact that they're losing money, of course, they're making some really bad political decisions, but that's another story for another day.
They're just making everybody mad.
Yeah, they're just pissing they're pissing both groups off because
they're pissing everybody off.
They take a stand on something that pisses one group off, and then they retract. It pisses the group off that they were originally supporting. But anyway, people are still eating up the philosophy of it. Okay, so you get these little girls that grew up on movies like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and stuff like that, okay? And what is the theme that these kinds of stories, these kind of fairy tale stories teach as a archetypal philosophical approach towards relationship, okay? What it teaches at the core, when you look at the Beauty and the Beast, what it teaches at the core is I can fall in love with someone who's detestable and change them.
Yeah.
And then we'll live happily ever after we've changed them. You not only can you not change a person, you have no right to change a person.
That you brought up Beauty and the Beast, and I'm going to say what I said in the pool that day.
Go ahead, yeah.
And I think the important distinction for Beauty and the Beast in particular is the difference between the animated and the live action. And say what you will about the live action. I know a lot of people don't like it.
I prefer the live action. I think it's better.
I love it. I love both. I do. But the live action is beautiful because it really dives into the backstory of the beast, and it shows you that he never really was this beast. He was acting this way out of trauma. He had his own background of suffering, and he created the beast as almost like an egregore to protect himself. And Belle showed him that he didn't have to be that way. And so I like the live action because it's actually, in my opinion, more what a true relationship should be. You're making the other person remember who they are. You know, and there's a beauty to that, you know, showing someone who they really are, not changing them, but revealing them.
Helping them open a door that's been shut.
And I think yes, and I think that's the beauty of the live action. And then in the animated one, I mean, it's just pretty to look at, but yes, that one is very much like I can change him. I did change him because it doesn't go into his background.
What about the princess that kisses the frog and he becomes a prince?
Yes,
that archetype, right? And it's not accepting them for what they are.
Right.
It's that I can take them into my life and I can change them to what I want them to be and live the fairy tale happily ever after ending. And I think a lot of little girls grew up with the understanding that that's what relationships are like.
I can change him.
They can change. Now, I'm not just taking out on girls, but guys have their own little thing going on.
Guys have their own.
That's why the little girls always grow up to go after the bad boys when they get older. I can change them.
Yeah.
I can tame him.
Well, then they can they can have their cake and eat it too, can't
But he
they?
can be wild in bed. Right.
Yeah, he can be wild in bed.
I mean,
Yeah, he can be wild in bed and everything's wonderful, but he can still be loving and adorable to me, you know, and unfortunately it does not work that way. If you take somebody who's, you know, kind of a misogynistic prick into your life, he might treat you really nice for a while because you're giving him what he wants, but eventually you're going to become old news.
There's a trope that is like, I'm loved by the man who hates the world. And it's like, well, what value is there in that?
Yeah, right. Well, there you go. So what the fairy tale princess syndrome or the Disney princess syndrome does is it teaches a dynamic that we can change the other person.
It teaches negative connotations for both.
Well, it does.
You mentioned the boys earlier. It teaches them that they can be, you know, awful, lazy, underperforming individuals and land a princess.
Yeah, land a princess. That's true. It works both ways. So what does that teach us about human psychology and human emotional maturity is that it sets a precedent from the beginning of a relationship that is already on fabricated grounds. There's no authenticity to it there. You're not getting involved with them because you love who they are. You're getting involved with them because you like physically what they seem to be, and then you're hoping you can change them emotionally over time. And you can't. In fact, if anything, if you see something in a person in the early stages of a relationship that you don't like, it will magnify every year you know them. Those negatives that you see in the beginning of the relationship just becomes more and more prominent.
What was cute at the beginning will be in the divorce paperwork later.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So you can't, that's the big mistake that people make. Okay. And that's, again, it gets us back to interpersonal dynamics and the lack of skill sets that people, you know, do not have to be able to manage these things. And one of them is that we can change people, you know, and I mean, I see this all the time. And then this is where some of the archetypes of the nagging wife come from, because she's always trying to change behaviors that are not changeable. So she seems to her, it seems like she's just being encouraging or, you know, trying to create a better atmosphere or whatever, or a better dynamic for the family. But to the guy, it feels like nagging because he will not change.
From a woman's perspective, talking about the
Yeah.
nagging thing because we've
Go
talked
ahead.
about it before.
No, go ahead.
But from the woman's perspective,
I do not think you nag, by the way.
oh, I know. No, I know that. No, but from the woman's perspective, in general, when a woman nags, and I think also there's a difference in opinion on what a nag is. Like what?
Well, how are you
what-
defining it?
A nag is, from my perspective as a woman, nagging is when you are saying the same thing repeatedly, like take the trash out. Take the trash out. Did you take the trash out?
Over
Have
and
you
over.
taken the trash out? Did you take the trash out? Your mother's coming over. Did you take the trash out? That's nagging from a woman's
Beating it
perspective.
to death.
And from a woman's perspective, that man, that husband is not a husband anymore. That is a child
yeah.
in her home.
Well-
because on the other end, she's nagging, but on the other hand, he's not taking any prerogative.
A lot of women,
He's not seeing that the trash needs to go
a
out.
lot of women can't get beyond the maternal instinct and start directing it towards their husbands. And a lot of husbands are all too
Because a lot of husbands don't step up.
and a lot of husbands are all too welcome, are all too eager to comply with being an eternal child.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
that is definitely an archetype for
yeah.
the
It's a
weaponized
common-
incompetence thing.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we've talked about that with other things, but it's actually very applicable here too.
If I don't do it, she'll do it.
So the first thing is that first you don't. Okay, so rule number one, you don't understand yourself well enough to have a healthy relationship. You don't understand other people well enough to have a healthy relationship. And you're going into, chances are good that you're going into a relationship thinking you can change them and make them more the way that you want them to be. You can't. So you have to. So here's the
You
counter.
didn't marry yourself.
Well, that's it. Here's the counter. You can't go into a relationship with something that you can't live with from the get-go. Okay? If you can't live with all of it, you can't live with any of it.
Right.
You don't pick the part that's nice, like the sexual part. That's usually the one. Because most of the time,
He's an idiot, but the sex is good.
and that's typically
Well,
the
that's not
physical.
going to last forever.
Yeah. No, it will not.
It will taper off.
Well, that changes too. And see, it takes us to.
That's where intimacy goes from physical to mental.
It does. And and I would actually argue that when you really break down the healthiest relationships, they were never really all that physical to begin with. The physical dynamic was just a way to enhance the emotional, psychological intimacy.
Well, I think I think the whole love language thing also plays into it. You have to know the love language of the other person in the relationship, whether it's, your husband or your coworkers or whatever. You have to know what their language is.
Yeah.
And if you've got someone whose love language is physical, and they're trying to woo someone whose love language is service, that's not going to work out too well.
No, it won't. It can't.
Because they think they're being loving.
Yes.
But the person who's...
And then they get resentful towards
Yes.
the person for not recognizing this.
So both are resentful because neither one of them are able to communicate.
Correct. And that's a lack of communication. It's
Yes.
lack of interpersonal, lack of interpersonal,
Yes.
interpersonal. Always comes back down to this. Everything you're going to hear us talk about here tonight can be traced back to that core. And that is where it goes wrong. So you have to always be willing to be honest with yourself and to be honest with everyone else. So what's the next deviation? So if you're trying to change people and realizing that they can't change, okay, you can't change them, all right? It's not fair for you to do so even if you could. And you can create the illusion that they are changed for a while, but then it falls apart eventually. The other part of the coin...
Well, everyone goes to the gym for the first 3 weeks in January, right?
Well, there you go. Exactly. The other part of the coin is the direct antithesis to this. We're always organically changing. And that can sometimes mean that you vibrationally start growing in different directions, which means that now you have to be extremely diligent with your interpersonal skills to be able to make that journey together. Because you are never the same from one moment to the next. You just don't notice those changes from the moments. But if a person who hasn't seen you in 20 years comes back and sees you, you're not going to be quite the person they remember 20 years ago.
Nope.
I'm not just talking about all the extra weight and everything else that we collect over the years. I mean, God, when you and I met 20 years ago, I mean, we were both really skinny and idealistic. And I mean, I will not deny the fact that
Pie in the sky a little bit.
Right. But
Little
when
bit.
we had a tremendous, I think, physical attraction to each other, at the same time, there was also the fact that we were friends first.
Yeah.
We never even considered any kind of physical relationship because we were friends first. And I will always say that that is an absolutely essential component to a successful relationship because because friendship has a different dynamic than any other kind of relationship. Okay, you've heard the story that you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family, which is usually used to explain why your family tends to suck, but yet you got your friends and you like your friends and you hang out with your friends all the time. And let's face it, most people, if you dig deep enough into their family, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of dysfunction there.
Lots of skeletons.
Yep. So most families not pleasant to be around, but friends you choose to be with, right? You spend time with, they understand you. And I think what it is with friendship that is different than any other kind, whether it be family, whether it be an intimate partner, or whether it be a job, like an employment colleague type of thing, is that friends have one thing that no other relationship offers, and that is the component of unconditionality.
Right.
You can be unconditionally understanding of your friend, but a boss can't be unconditionally understanding with you. A father can't be unconditionally understanding of his son. There's always going to be bias involved. There's always going to be expectation involved. And same with spouses or lovers. There's always going to be the dynamic that there is further expectation that you need to live up to. And when you don't live up to the expectation, then there's disappointment. And then that disappointment compounds into a crisis that eventually leads to some kind of detaching, where you split ways or it becomes a divisive experience. So, when you start a intimate relationship with friendship, that unconditionality can be carried over. Doesn't mean it will. You have to work on it, but it can be carried over into the intimacy so that as things change, which they inevitably will, you still have always the unconditional friendship to fall back on, which actually reinforces you through the changes and brings you slowly up to accommodating those changes or adapting to those changes.
It gives you groundwork to fall back on.
And I think we forget that, and if you don't have the friendship, you'll never get there. You can't. You won't grow through it. You will just grow apart. But having an unconditional component of friendship. Now, I'm not saying all friendships are unconditional. A lot of them are self-serving too. Okay, so friendship isn't immune. I'm just saying that the only relationship we have in life that has the built-in component of or capacity to be unconditional is friendship, because every other type of relationship always has expectation, whether it be, like I said, parents are always going to have expectations for their kids. Kids are always going to have expectations about their parents. And guess what? Neither one can ever live up to them. They never will. Your kids are always going to disappoint you in some way, and your parents are always going to disappoint you in some way.
Sorry, Mom.
It's true. It's true. But when you disappoint a friend, you kind of move on, because I think you go into it with different expectations. You're more at an equal level. No one's trying to one up the other in a true friendship. Now, again, if you don't have this, if you have friends that are trying to one up you, well, then they're not true friends.
No.
And we've had that in our life.
They're competitors.
I remember, I'm not going to give names, but you know who I'm talking about.
Names.
There are people that we have had in our life as a married couple that have become friends, that have come into our lives, and there were no friends. They were absolutely conditions.
Oh.
And you see this in church relationships too, because that's a different
Absolutely.
kind of relationship also. That's a different kind. You know, when your fellowship at church is a type of interpersonal relationship that carries a lot of expectation. They throw the morality at you. Look at me. Okay, in the first hour, you heard me throw out.
You're supposed to be calm.
Yes, I'm supposed to be calm
and diminutive,
and no profanity. And that's what your expectations
Priests
of a bishop.
don't cuss.
Yeah, right.
Priests don't lose their tempers.
they don't drink.
They don't,
Can you
they don't drink. They don't smoke.
how many things that I've disappoint people? I'm sure people tuned off because like, what kind of bishop is this?
A real one.
Yeah, a real one. One that's not going to fuck around with you. One that's going to actually take care of the situation. One that's going to be honest with you from the beginning to the end.
Well, this is where you fucked up.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. There's expectation there. The Christian's supposed to be this way. A bishop's supposed to be this way, and I reject all of that. So, the reason why I've been an outsider to the paranormal field and to religion itself is because I don't play that game. I will never play that game. I don't owe you anything. There is not one person in this world that I owe a damn thing to. Okay? Because I set my own standard and I live by my own standard. I think it's a pretty damn good one. I think I'm a person of integrity and I try to take that into my relationships. So I would say that a person that wants to enter into a healthy, long-standing, lasting relationship has to first make that kind of determination. They have to look at them. This is the intrapersonal now. They have to look at themselves and say, where am I at? You have to face your fault, your failings. You have to face your strengths, and you have to accept them for what they are. That doesn't mean you can't work on improving yourself, of course. I'm always working to improve myself. I mean, I think I'm a much more calm person than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think I'm rowdy today and a little bit rough around the edges, I mean, you should have seen me 10 years ago.
Again, that might be the cancer thing because, before my accident, let me tell you.
But cycle back through 10 years before that, you were calmer than you were
I was
now.
a lot more calm, yeah. When I was an idealist 20 years ago.
Yeah, we grow up and get out of that stage
We do.
pretty quick.
Well, because you know what?
Idealist,
You know what?
whatever. I was
I'm going to
19.
be...
Well, it's not healthy.
And I'm going to be honest
really
with you.
isn't.
I'm going to be honest and I'm going to say it the way it is. I'm not going to mince words. It's because life fucks you.
Yeah, it does.
And then that changes your feelings on life.
Do I wish we could be that way? Absolutely.
Of course.
Is that probably the higher way of being? Absolutely. Probably.
Ideally.
Is that what this world allows? No.
No. So the problem that it comes back to is that we have to be in a healthy relationship with another. We have to be fully accepting of ourselves with all of those ugly weaknesses and all of those wonderful strengths. You can't pick and choose, and you have to be willing to take the blame when you fuck up.
Sometimes you suck.
Yeah, sometimes you suck.
Sometimes you do.
And sometimes you're going to suck and you're going to suck again.
And you know what? Sometimes you're awesome.
Yeah. But that's reality.
You take it.
And
when
if
you
you
can,
go
and you
into a
improve when you
relationship thinking that you can just like take the parts you like, whether they be about yourself or the other person, you're going to be in for a really nasty surprise.
And that's the other thing, especially when a relationship is starting out again, whether it's intimate or whatever, you tend to show the other party the best side of yourself.
Oh, of course you do.
And I think that's why, when you look at books and blogs and podcasts and everything where they're talking about, 10 successful tips for a healthy marriage. And, invariably you will see someone recommend continue to date. And what they're actually saying, they're not saying, go buy roses, bring a corsage, go out in a limo, go to the theater or whatever. You can do those things if those are the things that you enjoy as a couple, but they're not saying woo the other person.
Right, yeah.
They're saying show the other person the best side of yourself.
The best side.
Remind them who it is that they fell in love with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when you say be friends, I think that is kind of, in a way, what it is. Because when you're friends, there's no pressure to be.
Well, that's the unconditional aspect.
Yeah, there's no pressure on mom to be mom in that moment. There's no pressure on dad to be dad in that moment.
You can be true
there's
equals. You can be true
you're
equals.
just friends kicking around.
A husband and wife can never be an equal,
Right.
because one has to be the husband and one has to be the wife.
Right.
And there are, whether we like it or not, there's roles attached to those archetypes.
There are.
Even in gay relationships,
Mm-hmm.
you will find that one takes on more of the traditional feminine roles
Mm-hmm.
and one takes on one of the more masculine roles. I've seen it time and time again. We have served so many gay couples because this church is, welcoming to all people. And it's always interesting to see that dynamic unfold. You never see, two that are taking on the exact same archetype, because it's not an equal relationship. They're not going to be that way.
And in any successful relationship, it changes.
It does.
Regardless of
It
whether it's
switches back and
homosexual
forth.
or heterosexual.
It switches back and forth sometimes.
Non-binary, whatever the relationship is, the successful ones, the roles switch.
Well, look at us. Okay, here's an example. Or sometimes,
We're actually a really good example.
well, yeah, because people look at, I think, my social media, and they see, the way we eat and everything, and they're like, boy, this bishop, he's, what kind of guy is this? He's always like asking for money for the church, but yet he's eating black truffles every night and all this stuff. And it's like, they don't understand that both of us have to work very hard to build a type of relationship where we can keep the church going and still live a normal life. And so there's a secular aspect to our existence that is completely separate from the church. And that is what affords us to be able to live the kind of lifestyle that we enjoy. But in order for me to be able to be the bishop, she has to do all the secular work, because I'm the full-time religious person. She's the one that has to go and actually do operations. Yeah, I mean, we're 50% owners of our business, okay, but she's the operations manager. I run the church.
Yeah, I got the boots on the ground.
Now I do the finances, so I do the finances for the business, and I make the investments. Mm-hmm. However, she does all of the actual boots on the ground work. All right. So the reason I'm able to do anything at all is because she makes all of the actual tangible money that affords us the lifestyle that gives me the freedom to not have to do this job. Now, how many women do you know that would put up with that? A lot of people, they're either one or two kinds. You're going to be the kind that's the real big career woman who's going to be like, you're not going to live off of my, right on my coattails.
I cannot tell you how many women I have encountered in my professional life who have said he'd be out on his ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
I bet.
I can't even count.
I can tell you that.
How
I know
many
that.
women
I know.
have told me
I
that.
know that's true. And then
And you know the main one. So
of course I do. Yeah, of course I do. And then the second kind of person is going to be the woman who wants to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. She wants the little fairy tale story. She doesn't care about, gender equality and roles and all that stuff. She wants to be cared for and nurtured and have the guy buy her all these nice things and take her all these nice places and have not a care in the world. There's not a lot of people that fall in between that. Well, you might want that, but you're okay with the fact that that's not the life that we've been given, because we have a higher purpose. Yeah. Now, when we got started in the relationship, we wanted nothing more than that. Yeah, I would have loved to be like, hard. I don't want you to go. I've told you, I don't want you to go to work. I don't want you to have to worry about this, because it sucks out there. Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to confess, it was a self-serving thing. Yeah. I didn't want to see her change.
Yeah, and it did.
And it did change her. And I'm going to be honest, it changed you for the worse.
Yeah, it did.
It did not change you for the better. I had to learn to adapt to that through this modeling that I'm telling you, is that the unconditional aspect is what is the foundation, not the changing.
Yeah.
Okay. Not because I think I can change her back to the way she used to be. Not that I can think that, that she can stay stationary forever. But that I understand that life is changing, people are changing, and we need to change along and accept those differences as they come, and always fall back on the unconditional aspects when you're having a difficult time, because you will have a difficult time. We don't fight that much, hardly ever anymore. We've gone through rough patches.
We went a long time without fighting, and then it seemed like once we did fight,
It was the be all and end all fight.
It was like,
but it was never a deal breaking fight. It was never the kind of fight where like, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce, or
and it's really more arguing than
it's really arguing.
It's frustration.
it's really more just to.
I mean, we have lash outs that happen when we're tired or frustrated. And look, I'm the kind of person that if I bottle it up, I become a monster that you don't want to ever see. So catharsis is how I deal with my thing. So if I seem like
not that y'all are privy to that, not. Y'all don't know what that's like.
They may not know to the extent that you do, but I think I'm
teasing because of the first hour.
I know. Well, the first hour is an example. Yeah, of course.
Ooh, yeah.
But I mean, that's the truth of it, though. And see, look at me. I mean, like right now, I'm already feeling better, and it's not the rum. I mean, it's. I feel better because I've released the tension. I don't bottle it up.
It's because I'm here.
Well, yeah, it's true. You do have a calming effect. I mean, you do. I do prefer when you're home. I mean, we've set it up where we've set it up so that she's home at least 3 days a week, sometimes 4. So when she does have to work, it's not too long, and we actually enjoy each other's company. But even when we're together, it's like we're just content sometimes to sit around the pool. I'm doing something on my phone or whatever. She's reading a book, and we don't have to be like constantly in each other's business,
gazing into each other's eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like. There's a time and place for that kind of stuff.
Yes, not when I'm around.
Sorry.
But, the reality is that, are we the people that got married? No. And I wish we could still be.
But no one can.
You can't hold on to that. So what you do hold on to is the things that are enduring.
And that's the thing, when you see like on TV people, couples arguing and stuff. You're not the person who I married. And it's like, well, of course not.
Well, no shit.
I mean, neither one of you are.
No one. And it all comes back to.
And the problem is that neither one of you adapted.
They did not adapt because they thought they don't want to change, but they want everyone to change around them.
Yeah.
Okay. It does not work like that. Okay. But there is a mutual aspect to it. So you could be the most perfect person going into the relationship, but if your partner, your chosen partner, is not willing to work with you, it's not going to work. You can't make them work. So you have to look. I'm going to close out this hour with saying that here's my final word of advice. You're going to have to go the St. Paul route. I call this the St. Paul route. All right. It's not really St. Paul, but it's close. It will be better for you to never get married, just not get into a relationship, than to get into a relationship with somebody that you cannot work with. Okay, somebody that you want to change or wants to change you, somebody that you can't grow through your mutual changes together. If you can't do that, it is far better to be alone and to just be content with that. Sex is not that important. We have a society that thinks it's so fucking important. It's not that important.
Well,
it really is
taught
not.
now that sex first, relationship later, and that's just a recipe for disaster.
And that's my problem with the agendas today. When you hear me criticize stuff like LGBTQIA+, what you're really hearing is me saying I'm sick and tired of people talking about their sexualities like I should care. I don't. Do what you want. But I don't need to know it, and I don't need a pride parade to hear it, and I don't need a rainbow to see it. All right? Do your own thing, and I will support you infinitely in your own thing. I just don't need it. Okay? It's not my business. And this is the problem, is that people make sex so important that it means that everybody else's business too. You need to know what I think. No, I don't.
It's like the whole body count thing that people are talking about now.
Body count thing?
Oh, yeah, body count.
What's this?
How many people you've slept with?
Oh,
wow.
What's your body count?
Jesus.
Yeah.
I wasn't even on that wavelength. I was thinking like you're talking about murder or something.
I know.
That's a disaster.
No, but it's like, apparently it's like an icebreaker. What's your body count?
Icebreaker?
Yeah. Yeah, it tells you.
We
about
used to
the
call that notches on the bedpost. But that's the fucked up world you got, folks. So you know what? You can be a little less fucked up by trying to listen to this show and, take some of it to heart. You're not going to do it perfectly. Look, none of us do, not even us. But if you stay to the core values of unconditionality, you're going to get far. And you're going to be a happier person. The reason you're unhappy, the reason you're miserable, the reason you're depressed, the reason why you don't like anybody and everybody hates you is because you're so conditional that no one can stand it, okay? Even you can't stand it. You just don't know it. You don't want to admit it.
Get everyone else out of your relationship.
Yep. And that's what we do. We do that remarkably well. And we've done it even in a physical way, because part of the motivation of moving into this location that's truly in the middle of nowhere, and it's locked off from the rest of the world. It's our own little bubble, okay, is a way of living that out in a physical way, is that we have our space and we don't let anybody infringe on that space. There's times where we kind of muddied the waters with the church. We don't do that anymore because we got burnt. All right, people burnt us on
Violate my
it.
personal space. No.
Yeah, when people violate your personal space, they don't care about your personal space. Okay, and we only let people into our lives who do, and that's why Jamie is one of the few people that step foot in this house. Okay. Heathcliff being the only other one, although I wouldn't say Heathcliff's terribly, unconditional.
Well, let's be real. This is his house. I mean, come on.
Yeah, we just live there, right?
Heathcliff and I,
He was saucy today.
talk about a strained relationship.
All right, we're going to take our top of the hour break, and when we come back, your questions. Okay, we'll take your calls. We'll answer any questions that came in the chat over the last 2 hours, and we'll just have some fun talking about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away.
pushing my limits and all the drive that I have. Well, I'm going the distance with you. I did till I knew I was missing on everything that I dread. Well, I built a resistance with you. Catch me when I fall, and I'll keep you off the ground. You were gone, I wish you'd stay. I could look at you for days. Time was well spent, that's when I knew that I need to spend my life here with you. Take your time, not in the fast lane. I understand that you've been broken too many times, but I'll be waiting to make you lose from all you've taken. But if we listen to each other and admit our mistakes, then I can show you who I am, because I'm not the same. I'm better with you. I'm better with you. I'm better with you. Catch me when I fall, and I'll keep you off the ground. That's when I knew that I need to spend my life here with you.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final part of Vestiges After Dark. Tonight, we are talking about relationships and basically how you deal with the relationships that don't work out and why that happens and what you can do about it. And I think we didn't even nearly scratch the surface tonight, but we gave you, I think, a foundation to build on. Now it's time to answer some of your questions I'm sure you have, and I've seen some of them in the chat room there. So we'd invite you to call into the show. You don't have to just talk about tonight's topic either. You can talk about anything that might be on your mind. The number to call is 718-362-6380. That's 718-362-6380. Remember to enter PIN number 855-4111. That's 855-4111 to be put into the queue. You can also ask your questions in the chat room. International callers can call me on Skype, Eye of the Seer. That's at Eye of the Seer, EYEOFTHESEER. That's about it. I'll have the number up on the screen here when we come back. Don't go away. Okay, I've noticed that there's quite a few questions in the chat room, and I went ahead and put the number on the screen as promised. So if you have a question or would like to call in, go ahead and do so. We take calls in the order we receive them, although most people seem to prefer to ask questions in the chat room, which is perfectly fine. So we only have Jamie here watching for them. So if we missed a question that we haven't covered here in this next hour, be sure to repeat it again, and we will try to catch it on the next time around. But that's why we like to have at least one other person looking at the screen, but hopefully she's caught them all. So Jamie, what's our first question today?
So we'll start relationship-wise. We'll start with Cassie. She says, can you explain being physically attracted enough to a friend to want to be intimate with them or marry them? I have never been attracted to someone I consider a friend in that way.
Okay. Well, I didn't have any attraction to Tracey when I first met her, and that was something that grew in time. I'm not sure, you'd have to answer for how you felt about me. I don't know, but I would say that the friendship was what it was, and it evolved into that organically, and that's the most important part of this. I think maybe another component that I never had time for in the last hour, we were talking about interpersonal. We're talking about the fairy tale, Disney princess syndrome, where you think that you can change the other, and we talked about how you don't grow through the natural changes that happen. And then we talked also about expectations and being unconditional, which are all necessary components to a healthy relationship. But one that I think is also important to also include here is that relationships must happen organically. You cannot make them happen. If you try to make them happen, they will fail. They have to happen on their own. So what I'm trying to say is be a friend first. And if something organically changes over time, and you're both agreeable to that, then pursue it. And those tend to be the healthiest, best relationships. But Tracey and I are friends first, lovers second. And it's always been that way. And if it was the other way around, I don't think it'd be half as good as it is.
No, I agree with that. And I do agree. Yeah, I would not say that there was an attraction when we first became friends.
No.
It's kind of like, I'm a fandom girl. I love fandoms. I'm not in like some of the more deep, pervasive fandoms, but I do enjoy fandom culture to a degree. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like there was, and I'm not mentioning this because I think that this gentleman is the bastion of attraction. Like I'm actually not attracted to this guy at all. But when Sam Heughan was cast as Jamie Fraser for Outlander, there was a little bit, not a little bit, there was a lot of pushback from book fans because, first of all, they had been reading these books for 20 years at this point, and he did not match in his, headshots and everything, what they had built up James Alexander Malcolm Mackenzie Fraser to be. And but now if you ask book fans, would you cast anyone else as the role of Jamie Fraser? Oh no, he is Jamie Fraser.
Yeah.
He is absolutely Jamie Fraser. And that's a little bit what it's like going from friends to attraction.
Yeah.
Because you're involved with someone for more textbook reasons,
yes.
Friendship or,
Yes.
your coworkers or whatever. But as you get to know the person and you get to see the inner workings and see the growth in that relationship, and you learn more about them, and you love what they stand for, you love what they love, you love, you're really interested in the things that interest them. You start to find that sexy.
Yeah.
You start to find that irresistible.
And that's what I think
and so the physical attraction comes later. And I think that's why this sex comes first culture really hurts people, because you're only looking for.
And that's why I think the question came in, because I think the pervading opinion is that why would you fall in love with a friend?
Right.
Because most people are programmed or have programmed themselves to pursue sexual attraction first. And friendships don't work on that level. So they wouldn't think that they could go that direction, because that seems the reverse of what they've already done.
Because speaking from my own experience, I'm a very cerebral person when it comes to intimacy. And I think a lot of women are like that too. They get into their head a little bit too much, which I think is why
you be able to get out of your head to let yourself go
Mm-hmm.
and actually feel the experience.
Well, I think a lot of women they can't do just the physical.
Well, they're judging themselves too.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, there is.
But what I'm specifically referring to is I think a lot of women just can't do just the physical.
Right.
They have to have more. They have to have an intimacy. That's the whole joke where, men who, that don't really get the idea of foreplay. They think foreplay is just, like
a waste of time.
Look, I'll tell you what a wise old woman told me. Women are like ovens.
Mm-hmm.
There's a preheat setting. 350 for about 10, 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
And
you can't just throw it in the oven and turn it on.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. You
gotta
exactly.
bring it up. You
gotta bring it up slowly.
You can't slowly, man.
You can't put a glass container into the oven when it's hot. You got to put that glass container in the oven cold.
Warm up, kids.
You got to bring that up together.
Right.
And I think a large part of that is when a woman is attracted to an individual, they tend to be more attracted to the mind.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't been attracted to a friend, it's not because they're not an attractive person. It just means that they're not for you.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. So I think really it comes back to you got to let every intimate relationship happen organically. If you try to make it happen, don't go looking for a relationship. That's why these dating sites, going to bars, doing the things that people do to find someone. Yeah, I mean, you got to, there's a fine line between making yourself available and going out of your way to find somebody.
Well, this also comes back to the interpersonal thing. You have to be content with who you are as an individual. And if you find someone else to share your life with, that's great.
Yeah.
But don't go looking for it.
Don't go looking for it. Let it happen.
Don't go shopping at Husbands R Us.
And understand, set your proper expectation. Letting it happen organically could mean you spend the rest of your life alone.
It could.
That's the risk you take for doing it the right way. But let me tell you, it gets back to what I said. Follow the St. Paul method. Okay, it's better to be alone than it would be to be in a relationship that I don't believe in it's better to love and lost than never have loved at all. I don't believe in that. I believe that it's better
if you're talking real love, if you're talking...
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like death or something, yeah, I guess it could apply in that sense.
If you're talking about like what we have, I do think it would be better.
But that's because we've had it.
Right.
But I mean, if what we had ended in divorce, I would have rather never had it.
Well, but it won't.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making.
But I think that's the loss here. I think that's the loss.
No, I'm talking about if you're. I mean, it depends on what you mean by the axiom. So if you're talking about death, like having loved someone and then losing them in death, it's better to. That's true.
Right.
But if you're talking about like,
which is how I understood the
a
axiom.
relation. Well, I've always seen it more than one way. I've always seen it by also being. It could be interpreted to mean that.
To love and part.
Even if you have to part ways, the time you had together was worth it. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
If it's not enduring, it's not worth it. I don't believe anything that doesn't last is worth it, which makes my life on earth very difficult because nothing here lasts. So what you do is you try to, I mean, maybe that's why I'm so religiously focused and why Christianity is something that speaks to me, because I'm about the things that endure. I'm not about the things that are temporary. And so relationships that are only around for a year or two, whatever, mean nothing. They mean nothing at all. I hate that.
Circling back around to like the theology of it, I think, there's a certain, there's a lot of focus that, people miss when it comes to physical relationships. Sex is not supposed to be about, I mean, it's nice that it feels good.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's for. It's for
it feels good, so you do it.
It's for.
I mean, it's about keeping the species going.
But it's.
I mean, that's why it feels good.
It's the act of creation,
right?
And to be involved with someone on any level other than a deeply intimate level in that act of creation, I don't understand the point. I don't understand.
I don't either. That's probably why we get along so well, because we don't get it.
But I mean,
I having come from my childhood was quite good at home, and my parents' relationship, at least from the vantage point that I had, was quite good until about. When I turned around the age of 16 or 17 is when they started having what seemed to be marital problems. I don't know if there was stuff happening prior to that wasn't being properly addressed. But that's when I noticed, probably because of, awareness. But I mean, it seemed like everything was fine prior to that. So when things fell apart, it was quite shocking. But I can tell you right now, having watched the destruction of my parents' marriage, no, I mean, nothing that came before that, including my existence, was worth that divorce. Nothing. It would have been better that they never had met each other. And I stand by that, even if it means that I shouldn't have, it would have never existed.
On the other side of it, I'll also say, we have 2 anniversaries because we were legally married by
a Buddhist
for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then we were sacramentally married.
Right.
And I will say that there was like a more profound, there's definitely a difference between, I mean, we were young and, things were different anyway, but there was definitely a difference in the union of ourselves.
The sacrament changed things.
And, I think it's just, it's an important thing that shouldn't be overlooked.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, since you're on it, I was going to mention it last hour. We ran out of time, so I'll mention it now since it came up.
It's like we're long-winded or something.
Part of the problem comes back to this bullshit with how we look at things like funerals and weddings. Okay, we have trivialized them down to being parties, whether it be the funeral pity party or whether it be the, hey, look at me, I'm a bride party. Okay, both of this is bullshit. Okay, these are religious, sacred, holy rites that have been marginalized and secularized and taken over by government certificates and laws and procedures. And, the marriage has turned into my special day. It's my special day. And it's like, no, this is a union for the glory of God. And you don't even get that. And that's what's happened from society turning it into a secular thing now. And so this is my big problem. Again, it's like, some people are like, oh, you don't like the gay people. No, I have nothing against the gay people. What I don't like is the government thinking that it can determine what a marriage is. It's not the government's prerogative to determine that. That's a holy, sacred, religious right. Okay? And if you're not a holy, sacred, religious person, I'm not sure why you care. But that's not how we see things. Right? We appropriate these special things and turn them into something else. Not to get off the subject or on a weird tangent, but I want to bring attention to something that was very disturbing to me this week. I actually meant to mention it earlier, and I forgot. But there was, and I know that there's people on the line, so I'm not going to be too long-winded here. But there is an individual. There was an individual that does urban exploration. Oh. And so what they do is they go into abandoned places and stuff. And I sometimes watch these shows on YouTube. I find them kind of interesting. I like looking at stuff from the past and seeing that. But this was a disturbing one that came across my feed because I watch some of the ones that are like, old castles in Europe or something. But I guess they figure, oh, you like urban explorers? Watch this guy. This guy found a, well, it was basically a mausoleum. It is a mausoleum called look it up. Okay. It's called the Roger Williams Mausoleum in Cranston, Rhode Island. And it was established about 100 years ago, like 1923, I think it was. And these are people, I mean, if you don't know what a mausoleum is, it's basically burial, usually Christian burial, but above ground, because some people don't like the idea of being buried under the ground. It tends to cost more money, and it's supposed to be a more luxurious experience. I don't know if you can call it that, but that's kind of how it's built. And so it costs more money to have it done this way. Look up the Roger Williams Mausoleum in Cranston, Rhode Island. What happened is the owners of it's a private ownership. Most of them are, which a lot of people don't realize. It went to the two sisters who died, and then nobody wanted to take responsibility for it, and it went abandoned. And it wasn't being cared for. And when I don't know if you realize this, but if you turn your air conditioning off and just leave it off for a few years, you're going to start having the entire building collapse because the moisture and all of the the mold and everything will start to eat literally the building, and it will start falling apart. So this is what's happening to this place, and because it's been abandoned for so long, it was abandoned about 20 years ago, people are breaking in and smashing into the graves and pulling the coffins out and taking all the bones. Oh. Okay? Mm. And so now when you go, and you can look this up, go look it up, and it's on YouTube, it's on TikTok, you can find it, just look up the Roger Williams Mausoleum in Cranston, Rhode Island. You'd think the government would actually do something useful and step in and say, we're going to take over if nobody privately is going to do it, because somebody should be taking care of this. These people bought and spent all this money to be put into this with the intention to be there for a very long period of time, certainly not where their grandkids are still around. And I bet you their great-grandkids perhaps, or grandkids, don't even know that grandma's skull is probably in some Satanist altar somewhere, because who's stealing these bones? I mean, what are they doing with them? What do you think they're doing with them? It's all being done for satanic ritual and all sorts of other occult things.
Somebody making macabre jewelry.
Yeah, that too. And so when you go and you watch these videos, there's bones on the ground. There's all these coffins completely, opened up and smashed. And this continues to happen, and the government does nothing about it, because that's what government does, nothing. They don't ever do anything of any value. They never have. And that's what ends up happening. So fortunately, 20 years would have been like, I think the last people were
like the 60s, I think.
It was about the 60s,
Yeah.
the last person that was actually placed to rest in there. So that's a long time for there to be any kind of spiritual attachment to a corpse. And so I'm not really concerned so much that these are people that are going to be unrested now because their bodies have been violated. It's the principle of the thing. And, talk about throwaway society and everything else. But I know we talked about last week, Christian burial versus alkaline hydrolysis and cremation, and I said, getting Christian burial and being buried on holy ground is ideal. But here's a situation where these people thought they had that. I guess they at least had it for the time that they needed it. But it's really kind of problematic and kind of sad. And look it up; it's kind of disturbing. Calling in from the state of Georgia, locally here. Hello, 706, you're on the air.
It's probably going to be Matt. It's not going to be relationship related. This is the gentleman I asked to call in last week, but he didn't get the message till now. He's chomping at the bit to tell his story.
All right, Matt, you're on the air if that's you. Hello? Hello, going once.
Matt.
Going twice. I got to move on, Matt.
Dude, call back in.
All right, I'm moving on. All right. What's our next question, Jamie?
That Cassie's was the main question that I saw.
Okay. Okay, so no other questions in the chat right now?
No, they've been having some good conversation back and forth, but I don't see any questions directly for us or
Okay.
for you or Tracey.
All right, so I guess we'll just continue the conversation from where we left off, and if somebody has a question, go ahead and ask it in the chat. And we got him calling back here again.
Come
Okay,
on, bro.
706. Hello, you're on the air.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you.
There you go, man. I recognize that voice.
All right, good deal.
Awesome.
Deal.
So what's
All
on
right,
your mind tonight?
Okay, so about 5 months ago, me and my girlfriend moved into a house out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, way out in the middle of Bowman, Georgia. We have, this nice big yard. Everything's great. It's almost too good to be true. Well, we get here the first week. But, hey, you remember the cat you were talking about that you heard in the background? You hear it? You hear it right now? I'm in my front yard.
No.
That's the cat you always hear because it never leaves. But anyway. So the first week we're here, it starts off, just little random noises you can't explain, like, oh, what was that? Or, you leave the kitchen, you come back in. Well, I could have swore that cabinet was shut. Or, simple little stuff. But over the last couple of months, I don't know of the last 2 weeks. Okay, I'm just going to say the last 2 weeks. It went from level 2 to like level 99. It went from it's dragging my girlfriend across the floor. It mimics my voice. Like when I'm not even here, she's answering me.
Mm-hmm.
There's mornings at 5 a.m. when I'm brushing my teeth. At 5 o'clock in the morning, getting ready to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
I hear my own work boots going on the hardwood floor, walking up to me when it's just me and my girlfriend in the room or, in the house.
Right.
And it's progressed and progressed and progressed. And my sisters, but both of my sisters have been here. Well, I mean, I sent you guys videos. Every video I sent you was took with an iPhone 12. All I did was hit record and walk outside.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's to the point to where, like, yesterday or Sunday, in front of her 11-year-old son, he's just sitting on the couch watching Transformers, not bothering nobody. I'm just walking through the house. All of a sudden, I'm flying all the way across the living room just from walking and have a massive bruise on my knee. And I tripped. It's like a 30-pound speaker from Sam's Club.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I promise you, if he did not have school, I would get him on here because, I mean, you know, he has no reason to lie. He's a child. You know, children don't lie.
Right.
So I'm walking, and if you knew that, I mean, my sisters and, you know, my girls are all alive right now. Maybe took just normal, you know, I'm 5'8", 5'9", you know, I'm not a real tall guy. I'm, you know, average size.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm just taking about, you know, I'm going about 9 steps. Just casually walk. I mean, you know, how do you walk to your home? Casually, right?
Right.
Okay. So all of a sudden, this 30-pound speaker in my floor is flying across the room along with me. I have a massive bruise right now on my left knee. And it turns out the next day after this happens, I'm not trying to, you know, I mean, you know, when you're with somebody, you know, sometimes you might shower together, whatever, you know,
Sure.
after dark, whatever.
Yeah.
My girl was like, what is that on your right shoulder? You got to look, and I have a bruise on my right shoulder blade
Mm-hmm.
from the night that was not there the day before, except from when I was just casually walking and sent a 30-pound speaker 2 feet across the living room floor, and I went 4. And then 2 weeks before that, my girlfriend gets drugged across the ground, and every night, okay, so like the other night, we're laying in bed, and we have a 5-month-old puppy. His name is Whiskey. And he always sleeps at the foot of the bed. You know, that's where dogs sleep. Well, this one night, out of nowhere, I couldn't even tell you what time it was. He just, like, jumped, like, in between me and my girlfriend in the bed, like, on the pillow and everything, like, dead in between us. So, you know, Whiskey, come on, dude, let's get back down there. You know, move, I'm trying to sleep. You know, I got work tomorrow. Well, about the time I get him down there, I got to roll over on my right side. And my right side faces my doorway.
Mm-hmm.
The second I rolled over on my right side, got comfortable, pulled the blanket back over, you know, got all snuggled up with my pillow and everything, I said hey to myself in my own ear, and it was like somebody's lips was touching my ear. I jumped out of that bed so quick in my underwear, my head almost hit the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
It woke my girl up. And, you know, like I told y'all before, last week, she got choked in her sleep. And I know this, I don't believe it myself. I really don't. I don't.
We saw that video,
I almost feel like
Matt.
I need to check myself into a mental institution.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. I'm to the point where I feel like I'm going crazy because me and my girl both. It's to the point, like I told you in the text.
Mm-hmm.
If we're sitting in there watching TV and a stick falls out of a tree, we are scared to death because we truly don't know what it was.
And I imagine you're not getting any sleep either, are you?
I wake up every day,
Yeah.
so drained, and I wake up with a massive headache. I'm talking about every single day. My headache is so bad that it's almost making me sick. But the weird part is, it has nothing to do with my job. Nothing. As long as I'm away from this property for a certain amount of time and I get around positive energy,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like myself again.
Okay.
But other than that, I feel like I've had like 1 hour of sleep. I have a headache, like I'm talking about like almost making you want to vomit.
Mm-hmm.
So bad.
Right.
But I mean, even with no medicine, I'll get in my car, I'll leave, I'll go to work. I'm there, I'm laughing and cutting up with my
Headache
coworkers.
goes away.
Positive energy. I'm good.
Right.
Because like I'll come in and they're like, man, what's wrong with you, dude? And I'm like, I'm tired. And then a couple hours go by and they're like, you must have drank a Red Bull. No, I didn't. No, I'm just, I mean, I can't even explain it. It's just all of a sudden, it's just like I'm slowly coming back to life.
So tell me this: how long did you live at the house before the problem started?
We are right at 5 months. We are right at 5 months that we've been here total.
And you didn't have these kinds of disturbances until
He said they started the first week.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So So,
No, I'm talking about like the dragging
Okay.
and the aggressive stuff that you're describing. When did that start?
No, nothing has been. No, that started when we moved here. So, okay, so last year I got divorced, got my own place, met my new girlfriend, and we tried to start a life together. Well, we got I had a townhouse, and it was nothing crazy. It was, like I said, the first week here, it was just little booms and bangs that you really, what was that? Or, why is that cabinet open? I could swear it was closed. It was nothing serious. The only thing that was serious was me as a man. I would wake up with bruises all around my man, like not around my main area, but like my thighs and stuff,
Right.
Well, we left there. We left. Because these bruises were not there when I went to sleep, but I wake up and there's these bruises, like I said, near my man area. So we left. We come here, first week, little booms and bangs and creaks that, whatever. And then, like I said, it got to a cabinet, and then it got to this, and then it got to that, and then it got to the point to where, like, it mimics our voices. Like, the scariest thing, but not the scariest thing, but like one of the scariest things is I was getting ready for work at 5 a.m. one morning, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and I'm putting my socks on. I mean, I'm still in my underwear. I mean, we all grown. I'm still in my underwear. I literally just got out of bed. So I'm putting my socks on, and my girlfriend whispered in my ear, "What are you doing?" So I turn around and I'm like, "I'm getting ready for work. What do you mean?" So when I turned around and I asked her, "I'm getting ready for work. What do you mean?" That actually woke her up. It was not her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, me saying I'm getting ready for work woke her up. Which goes back to me brushing my teeth. I am the only man in this house. I'm the only one that wears work boots and on hardwood floor. And at 5 a.m., I hear my own work boots walking up on me. And then, like I said, it's progressed to the point to where it's actually getting physical. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Are you guys having arguments over nothing seemingly at all? Lashing out at each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's mainly me. I you know what? I'll admit it. And the thing is when I get really, really angry and we fight or whatever, I don't recall a bit of it. Like,
yeah, I saw the wall.
I'll put
I
posts
saw the
on
wall in the
Facebook.
hallway. Yeah.
She's talking about the holes in your hallway. Have you punched those holes?
Yeah, one or two of them are me, but I
Yeah.
don't remember them. That's the thing. That is the scariest part. Is when I, like, right now, nobody's mad, everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
But like, for some reason, like when I'm okay. So what it is when I'm in that house too long is when it happens.
Mhm.
Like, over the weekend, we refused to go in the house,
Right.
and everything was fine. But before that, when I'm in that house for too long, it's like it consumes me, and it's almost like when me and my girlfriend are doing great, it hates it.
Right.
And like I said, it turns me mean, and I'm telling you, you can ask anybody that knows me. I'll put posts on Facebook and this, that, and other, and I don't recall a single letter. Not a single one. I'm talking about stone sober. It's like so that night, so the video y'all got on my girlfriend getting choked, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a Sunday night. That Monday morning, I was getting ready to go to work. She got up thinking it was still Saturday. But she lost the whole weekend. And the whole weekend, she was acting weird. Like, this, whatever is here is not okay.
No, you definitely need to have
It's not okay.
some kind of. I mean, it sounds like an aggressive enough entity that this would require probably a minor exorcism.
Well, see, like I said, we've been there almost half a year, but over the last I'm telling you, the last 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks, it has, like I said, it has went from level 1 to like 93.
Well, when
like
did you contact us
I don't
first?
know what it did.
When did you first contact us?
Last week.
So do you think
y'all?
did it coincide? Yeah. Did the increase in activity happen around the same time that you contacted us?
I contacted y'all screaming and crying because I'm a 32-year-old man. I'm a welder. I'm a good old country boy. Don't scare me. I called y'all screaming and crying like a little baby because I just watched my girlfriend get drugged 3 feet across my living room floor by something I couldn't see.
Right, that's what we're asking.
That's why I contacted y'all.
Right, so sometimes when you reach out for help, or you're talking about reaching out for help, sometimes the activity will increase.
Everybody laughs at me. They're like, "Oh, bullcrap!"
We're not laughing at you.
You know, well, that's movie. Well, no, I'm just saying, like, you know, normally, oh, that's just in the movies. You know, and I thought that too till I saw it with my own 2 eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm telling you, I've always believed in God, and I've always believed in, you know, spirit. You know, I'm not gonna say ghost or whatever. I ain't gonna say that, but I've always believed in, you know, there's something else that's beyond us. I've always believed that. You know, I was raised Christian.
Yeah.
But, you know, this paranormal activity movies and all this, you know, this ghost adventures. I honestly, for the longest, I mean, you can ask anybody. I've always like, you know, whatever. But over the last 2 weeks of my life, like, I say back every word I have ever said because
it's a common thing. Actually, it's a common thing that people tend to think it's all garbage until they experience it.
Interesting
and
thing,
I'm sure
Bishop.
my sister is in the comments right now. I can't see the comments.
I'm looking through. I'm trying to keep up with it.
Yes, her name is Jessica Vaughn. I mean, she's 24 years old, and I'm almost 33. So, I mean, she's been there with me for a long time, and she'll tell you, this is not me.
So,
like, you know, I walk around with my chest poked out and but I'm gonna tell you, this right here is it has literally brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Like, I can't.
Some people in the chat are saying that they're being affected by the energy. I can tell you're frustrated, and I actually think you're being affected right now because I will say something. I'm not going to say it's related. When I was on the phone with you earlier today, I got a ringing in my right ear. Well, when you started to get agitated on the phone with us right now, I got ringing in my right ear.
But that's what it does. It gets me. That's what it does. It agitates me. And then when I
can tell,
like once I really cross that threshold, I promise you, I don't remember nothing. But see, right now, I'm out in the driveway. I don't want to be in that house talking about this.
And you're still agitated, even in the driveway.
Yeah, I'm in the driveway.
Okay.
I think what obviously needs to happen is you're going to need to have
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're going to need to have a solemn blessing done on both, you know, you and your girlfriend. And we're going to have to, most likely, from the sound of it, exercise the property and seal it. We have your contact information, so it's really just going to be a matter of getting you on the books so that we can come out and do these things. Because I don't think there's anything else that's going to work that I can tell. I mean, you could do prayers, and I think it's just going to make it worse. If you start sprinkling holy water everywhere, it's just going to make it worse.
Let me put this out there. I think it was not this past weekend, but the weekend before, Friday night. I'm Christian, I'm Southern Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
I've reached out to all my Christian Southern Baptist fellow worshipers, and I want to say they laughed at me, but it was like, okay. So I went out of my own religion, and I went all the way to Athens, Georgia, to go see a Catholic priest.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it had a hold of my 5-month-old puppy and everything else. You know, he did a prayer. He didn't do an exorcism, but he did a prayer over him, and I know that he blessed me and my girlfriend, and he gave us holy water and holy oil. He said, when you get home, take the holy water, you know, put it in every threshold of your doorway. Take the holy oil, draw a cross on every wall in your wall.
Okay.
Every wall in your house, and we did that.
So it's gotten worse since you've done that. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense to us.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That makes sense to us.
Oh my gosh. No. When I say worse, I mean like I can't even sleep at night worse.
Yeah. Do you have other? Another place you could stay temporarily?
Oh. Do you have the ability to get a hotel for a few days just to let things calm down? Or stay with friends or something where you can get out of the house for a few days till the energy settle? Okay.
Done that, and when we came back, okay, for a day or two, and it was just like
you wouldn't be able to go back until it's taken care of.
It doesn't matter if we leave for a day or two. If we leave for a day or two, when we come back, it's still here. It's my home.
I missed it. Did you purchase it or rent this place?
It's rent. No, it's a rental.
It's a rental.
And now that we've done a little research, out in the exact spot we're at, it's an old Civil War background.
Oh.
But I'm told. From what I'm told.
Well, that's
up there in
Bowman, the internet says.
Yeah.
I don't know. Definitely. That's what I was told and what I've read. I don't know how true it is, but I can tell you right now, pulling my driveway, we are out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like
at this point, I'm options. I went out of my own religion to help. When I did, it almost seemed like it helped, but when I did what he said, it made it so much worse. Like it's like it made it mad.
It probably did.
You poke the hornet's nest.
It probably did. And then the problem is that a lot of people who say that they know how to handle these things don't, which only makes matters worse too.
That's what scares me.
Yeah. I think what you're going to have to do is, ideally, Matt, really what you should do is you should live somewhere else until we can get the situation taken care of. But that doesn't sound feasible. So there's not much I can suggest outside of that, as far as dealing with this until it can be handled properly, because it's going to increase. I would say the best that you can do until we can get there is to not entertain it at all. Don't do anything to try to make it stop, and do as little as possible to interact with it. Don't communicate with it. Try not to pray it out. Try not to, don't use holy water or anything. I would say try to just be as neutral as possible. It's still not going to completely resolve the problem until we get there, though.
See, the thing is, you were not the first person to say that. So since, ran out of holy water, I have, obviously, you can't go to the Ingles or Walmart and get some holy water. So once I ran out, that was it.
Right, yeah.
So once that was it, that was it. So, you're not the first person to say, don't say this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, to the point, like the other night, I told you about my girlfriend getting choked in the middle of the, I sent you that.
Yes, we watched it.
We watched some of it.
I heard
pretty compelling.
I heard my own voice. Whisper, "Hey," in my ear. And I'm telling you, when I jumped out of bed so hard, I almost broke the ceiling fan because it scared me so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The reason I'm in my driveway talking to you right now.
I wish you had a place you could go stay for a while. I wish you had family or something you could go stay with for a while.
I do. But see, all my family's in South Carolina, and I work and live in Georgia.
Yeah, so you can't.
Prices are unreal.
I'm gonna contact you again this week, Matt. We're gonna go through the footage. We have an investigation actually tomorrow, but so Thursday and Friday I will go through the footage and I will call you probably Friday, and we'll talk some more. And I'm gonna try and get you on the schedule.
I think this needs to be the next case. Yeah,
right. We're gonna move you up the queue. I did have another investigation ahead of you, but I think yours warrants being pushed
We
up.
triage our cases, so if a case comes in that's more severe.
Like my sister and friends and my girl and my sister's friends, they're all in the chat right now.
Right.
So
And so get their phone numbers
a lot
and
scary, Matt
see if
Jones.
they'll be willing
Matt
to talk
Jones
to
don't
me.
scare easy. Jones don't scare me. I don't scare easy. It takes a lot to scare me. Screaming and crying.
I hear
Yeah.
you, because it's
32-year-old
hard. It's
man
hard
was-
when you're an
I
alpha male
lost it.
and
I
you're a
lost
protector.
it.
Yeah, it's hard when you can't fight something you can't see.
To explain
I
that.
get you.
Explain watching your girlfriend get jerked across the floor. That changed my life.
Yeah.
Mentally, changed my life.
Yeah.
For people that they almost laugh at me.
Well, no, we've seen
We're not laughing.
You know what?
worse. So
You know what? But before I experienced it, I have to sympathize because I would have laughed at them too.
well, it's
But
just
now that
not.
I've seen it with my own two eyes,
Yeah,
I apologize to anybody.
it's
that I've
not
ever
part
laughed
of
at
normal
over
human
that.
experience. So that's not going to be something that
No,
is typically
no,
understood.
it's not. I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of things in my 32 years, and this right here about broke me.
Well, no one in this chat.
Like, I'm scared
Thinks
to go to
you're
bed.
crazy.
Like I'm so scared I'm gonna get drug out of bed when I go to sleep.
Yeah.
If something does
But that's
happen
how
tonight,
bad
I
it is.
want you to document what you can and contact me. Okay, you've got my number.
Whatever you do right
Well,
now,
I'm to
okay,
the
because
point
we're about at the
if
end of
we
the
lay down. I'm just gonna hit record.
We're about it. Yeah, that's good.
Do not engage.
We're at the end of the show. So my instructions right now for you is to do not engage, do not communicate with it, do not talk to it, do not try to pray against it, and already don't use any kind of rituals of any kind, or communicate with other groups that want to try to or claim that they can try to help you with this. At this time, if you can't live somewhere else, which it doesn't sound like you can.
Wait, you good? Wait.
Like the more y'all are talking about it, it's in the hallway, and it gives shit out of me. So the door just came open. When I went to go get up, it fucking swung open.
That's his girlfriend coming out of the house telling me the
Okay,
door
so
just
just
came
so
open.
y'all know, okay, so there's a hallway. Okay. All right. You know the hallway that had all the baby powder in the floor?
Yes, so that's what that was. You were trying to catch footprints.
You know what I'm
So
talking about?
one of the doors flew open.
I was trying to catch foot. Yeah, so that should just tell you I'm not playing. I used an entire a bottle of baby powder just to get a footprint.
Yeah.
But the hallway is also the same direction my girlfriend got drugged when my 23 and 16-year-old sister came over just to hang out. They kept hearing things in the hallway. And then now I'm out in the driveway. I know y'all heard her screaming.
All right,
Yeah,
y'all,
we did.
She
We're
said
at the end of the show, though, Matt.
It wasn't a violent open. It was an easy, just like.
Yeah, we're at the end of the show. So what I'm going to tell you to do, okay, is to simply follow those instructions. If you can't get out, just don't engage with it. We're going to get you on the schedule. For all of you out there, we do have a case tomorrow, so say a prayer for us. And we also will be back next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for open lines, open topics. Again, we'll have another 3 hours where we'll engage all your questions. So start thinking right now what you want to ask us and call into the show and write your comments in the chat room, and we'll take them as we go. But until then, we'll see you out there in the ether. God bless everyone.
I'll call you shortly, Matt.